Isabella Cole's wedding night should have been filled with passion and promise. Instead, it was a signature on a contract and a cold handshake from the man who now owned her. 3 weeks later, she's learned to be invisible in Victor DeLuca's penthouse. Silent, unseen, untouched. The crime lord made it brutally clear their marriage is business, nothing more. Her father's debts are paid. She is the payment. But when Victor returns without warning and orders her to pack immediately, everything changes. What he calls a honeymoon feels like a dangerous game she doesn't understand. And Victor DeLuca never plays games he doesn't intend to win. Welcome to a story of power, possession, and the thin line between captivity and desire. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin where all dangerous love stories start, with a deal that was never meant to include the heart. Isabella had learned to make herself small. In the 3 weeks since she'd stood in that sterile courthouse and spoken vows that meant nothing, she'd mastered the art of disappearing. She woke before dawn, before Victor's staff arrived. She moved through the penthouse like smoke, leaving no trace. No dishes in the sink, no indentation on the furniture, no proof she existed at all except for the marriage certificate locked somewhere in Victor DeLuca's office. The penthouse itself was a monument to wealth and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering city skyline. Every surface gleamed, marble countertops, polished hardwood floors, chrome fixtures that caught and reflected light like diamonds. Original artwork hung on walls painted in shades of charcoal and cream. Everything was beautiful. Everything was cold, just like her husband. Isabella stood at those windows now, watching the city wake beneath a gray October sky. Somewhere down there, 23 floors below, real people lived real lives. They made choices. They fell in love because they wanted to, not because their father had gambled away everything and left them as collateral for men who collected debts in blood. She touched the gold band on her left hand, still foreign after 3 weeks. It was elegant, expensive, perfectly sized. Victor had known her ring size without asking, which should have been romantic but instead felt like surveillance. Everything about Victor DeLuca felt like surveillance, like she was an asset he'd acquired and now monitored with the same cool detachment he probably applied to his stock portfolio. If stock portfolios involved money laundering and territorial wars with rival crime families. Mrs. DeLuca. Isabella jumped, spinning from the window. Victor's housekeeper, Rosa, stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, a room Isabella had never entered. Victor had made it clear on their wedding night. She had her own suite on the opposite end of the penthouse. Separate lives. Separate worlds. A marriage only on paper. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." Rosa's expression was kind but carefully neutral. She'd worked for Victor for 12 years, and Isabella suspected the woman had seen things that would give most people nightmares. "Mr. DeLuca will be home this evening. He asked that you be ready to leave by 8 o'clock. Isabella's heart stuttered. "Leave?" He didn't provide details. Rosa moved into the living room, carrying fresh towels that smelled like lavender and money. "He asked that you pack for warm weather, 2 weeks' worth of clothing." 2 weeks. Victor had barely spoken 50 words to her since the wedding, appearing at the penthouse only twice, once to retrieve documents from his office, once to host a business dinner where Isabella had been displayed like a trophy and then dismissed. Now he wanted her to disappear with him for 2 weeks? "Where are we going?" Isabella's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I don't know. I'm sorry." Rosa paused, something almost sympathetic flickering across her face. Mr. DeLuca values his privacy, even from those who work for him, especially from the wife he bought to settle a debt, Isabella thought, but didn't say. After Rosa left, Isabella returned to her suite and stared at the closet full of clothes she hadn't chosen. Victor had arranged everything. A complete wardrobe delivered the day after the wedding, every piece in her exact size, every item expensive and tasteful and utterly impersonal. Dresses she'd never wear. Shoes for occasions she'd never attend. The wardrobe of a woman who looked like her but wasn't her at all. She packed mechanically, choosing simple pieces, trying not to think about what this meant. A honeymoon, Rosa had called it, when she returned with a leather suitcase monogrammed with Isabella's new initials. But honeymoons were for couples who'd chosen each other, for people in love. Isabella and Victor weren't people in love. They were parties to a contract, and she'd learned enough about Victor DeLuca to know he never did anything without calculation. This trip had a purpose. She just didn't know what it was yet. The day dragged endlessly. Isabella tried to read but couldn't focus. She ate lunch without tasting it. She watched the clock like it held answers instead of just minutes ticking toward 8 p.m. At 7:30, she dressed in dark jeans and a cream silk blouse, pulled her long dark hair into a simple ponytail, and studied herself in the mirror. She looked calm, composed. Nothing like the terrified girl who'd stood beside her father 3 weeks ago while he signed away her future to pay for his mistakes. "I had no choice, Bella," he'd said, hands shaking as he'd scrawled his signature. "They would have killed me. You understand that, don't you? I had no choice." He'd had choices, years of them. Every time he'd walked into a casino, every time he'd borrowed from men like Victor DeLuca, every time he'd promised he'd stop and then didn't. Isabella had been working 2 jobs trying to keep them afloat, trying to pay rent and utilities and buy groceries, while her father fed his addiction and dug them deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. Until Victor had appeared with his solution, his offer. Marriage in exchange for erasure of the debt, a life sentence for her freedom. Her father had agreed before she could even process what was happening. At precisely 8 p.m., the private elevator that served only the penthouse chimed. Isabella's pulse hammered as the doors slid open and Victor DeLuca stepped into his domain. He was a study in controlled power, 6'3" of lean muscle in a perfectly tailored black suit, dark hair cut short, jaw sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes were the color of smoke, gray and penetrating, missing nothing. At 35, he'd built an empire that officially dealt in real estate and investments, but unofficially controlled half the city's underground operations. He was brilliant, ruthless, and completely untouchable, and he was staring at Isabella like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're ready." It wasn't a question. Victor's voice was deep, smooth, with an edge that suggested he expected compliance and always got it. Rosa said to pack for warm weather. Isabella's hands twisted together before she forced them still. She wouldn't show fear. She'd given Victor everything else. He wouldn't get that too. "The car is waiting." Victor's gaze traveled over her. Not sexual, more like assessment, like he was cataloging details for later use. "We have a flight to catch." "Where are we going?" "Away." He picked up her suitcase like it weighed nothing, gesturing toward the elevator. "That's all you need to know for now." Isabella wanted to push back, demand answers, assert some kind of control over her own life. But she'd learned in 3 weeks that Victor didn't negotiate. He stated facts and expected acceptance. Arguing was like arguing with gravity. She stepped into the elevator, acutely aware when Victor followed and the doors sealed them in the small space together. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Gunpowder, maybe, or just danger. This close, she could see the faint scar along his left jaw, the way his shoulders filled his suit jacket, the absolute stillness with which he held himself. Victor DeLuca didn't fidget, didn't make nervous small talk. He existed with the confidence of a man who controlled everything around him, including her. The elevator descended in silence. A black SUV waited at the private entrance, windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light. A driver, one of Victor's security team, built like a tank, held the door open. Isabella slid into the leather interior, Victor following immediately. They drove through the city as darkness fell, streetlights beginning to glow against the twilight. Isabella watched the familiar streets pass, the cafe where she used to buy coffee before work, the library where she'd spent Sunday afternoons, the whole life she'd left behind when she'd become Mrs. Victor DeLuca. "You're very quiet," Victor said suddenly. Isabella turned to find him watching her, that penetrating gaze missing nothing. "I don't know what you want me to say." Most women would have questions. "Would you answer them?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Probably not. They lapsed back into silence. Isabella wanted to ask why now. Why this sudden trip after 3 weeks of near total avoidance? She wanted to ask what he expected from her, what role she was supposed to play in whatever this was. But she'd learned that Victor revealed information on his own timeline, not hers. The SUV eventually turned into a private section of the airport, driving past commercial terminals to a restricted area where sleek jets sat like expensive toys. Their vehicle stopped beside a Gulfstream G650, its stairs already lowered in invitation. "We're flying private," Isabella said, the obviousness of the statement making her feel foolish the moment it left her mouth. "I don't use commercial airlines." Victor exited the SUV, speaking to his security team in low tones while Isabella climbed out on her own side. She'd never been on a private jet before. Before Victor, she'd never been on any kind of jet. The farthest she'd traveled was a bus trip to Philadelphia for her college roommate's wedding. Now she was apparently flying to some unknown destination on an aircraft that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The interior was even more impressive than the penthouse. Cream leather seats, glossy wood accents, soft lighting that made everything glow warmly. A flight attendant in a crisp uniform greeted them, taking their bags and offering champagne that Isabella declined and Victor accepted without acknowledgement. "Sit wherever you're comfortable," Victor said, settling into a seat and pulling out his phone. "It's a long flight." "How long?" 8 hours. 8 hours. That meant they were leaving the country. Isabella chose a seat across from Victor, buckling in as the engines began their low rumble. Through the window, she watched the ground crew move efficiently, preparing for departure. "Have you traveled much?" Victor asked, still focused on his phone. "No." "You'll enjoy this then." Would she? Isabella doubted enjoyment was possible when you were essentially a prisoner, but she didn't voice that thought. The jet began to taxi, and she gripped the armrests as they accelerated down the runway and lifted smoothly into the night sky. The city dropped away beneath them, all those lights and lives and possibilities that weren't hers anymore. Isabella watched until they climbed above the clouds, and there was nothing to see but darkness. "You should eat something," Victor said. "The flight attendant will bring dinner shortly." "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten properly in 3 weeks." Isabella's head snapped toward him. "How would you know that?" "Rosa reports to me." Victor finally looked up from his phone, meeting her eyes directly. "She's concerned. She says you barely touch your meals." Heat flooded Isabella's cheeks, anger mixed with humiliation. "You have her spying on me?" "I have her ensuring you're taken care of." Victor's tone remained level, infuriatingly calm. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like surveillance. From where you're sitting, you're my wife. Your well-being is my responsibility." "Your wife on paper," Isabella shot back. "You made that very clear." Something shifted in Victor's expression, a crack in that perfect control. "Did I?" "The wedding night. You said this was business, a transaction to clear my father's debt. You said I had my own suite, and you expected me to stay out of your way." "I said a lot of things." Victor set his phone aside, giving her his full attention for the first time since they'd married. "Some of which I'm reconsidering." Isabella's heart began to pound. "What does that mean?" "It means things change. Circumstances evolve." "That's not an answer." "No," Victor agreed. "It's not." The flight attendant appeared with dinner, some kind of elegant chicken dish with vegetables Isabella didn't recognize, and a glass of white wine. She accepted it mechanically, too unsettled by the conversation to actually eat, but needing something to do with her hands. Victor ate with the same controlled precision he applied to everything, finishing his meal efficiently before returning to his phone. Isabella picked at hers, managing a few bites before giving up. "Where are we going?" she asked again, softer this time. Victor considered her for a long moment. "Somewhere beautiful, somewhere private, somewhere we won't be interrupted." "Why?" "Because I want to know my wife." The words hit like a physical blow. Isabella stared at him, searching for deception or manipulation, but his expression remained unreadable. "You could have gotten to know me without flying 8 hours. Not the way I intend to." Something in his tone made her skin prickle. Not quite threat, not quite promise, but something in between that she couldn't name. "Victor, I don't understand what's happening." "I know." He stood, moving to the bar and pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He handed her one before settling into the seat beside her, close enough that she could feel his body heat, smell his cologne. 3 weeks ago, I made you an offer. You accepted out of necessity, not choice. I respected that by giving you space. And now? Now I'm done with space. Victor raised his glass, waiting until she reluctantly did the same. To honesty, Isabella, and to seeing what exists beyond the contract we signed. They drank. The liquor burned down her throat, spreading warmth through her chest. Victor's eyes never left hers, and for the first time Isabella saw something beneath the ice, something heated and hungry and completely focused on her. I'm still afraid of you, she whispered. Good. Victor's smile was slow, dangerous. Fear means you're paying attention, but fear isn't all you feel, is it? He was right, and that terrified her more than anything. Because yes, she was afraid of Victor DeLuca, but she was also fascinated by him, drawn to the way he commanded every room he entered, the intelligence in those gray eyes, the rare moments when his control slipped and she glimpsed something raw underneath. She was attracted to her husband, the man who'd bought her, the criminal who'd made her father's debts disappear in exchange for her name and her freedom. What did that say about her? Get some rest, Victor said, standing and moving back to his original seat. We land at dawn. The real journey starts then. Isabella wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but exhaustion was pulling at her. The emotional whiplash of the day, the stress of 3 weeks living in limbo, the confusion of Victor's sudden shift in behavior, it all crashed over her at once. She reclined her seat, accepting the blanket the flight attendant brought, and closed her eyes against the soft cabin lights. Sleep seemed impossible, but somehow she drifted off to the steady hum of the engines carrying her toward an unknown destination with a husband who was still a stranger. When she woke, pale dawn light was filtering through the windows. Isabella blinked, disoriented, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings before memory returned. The jet. Victor. The mysterious trip. She sat up, finding Victor already awake, dressed in dark pants and a white linen shirt that made him look somehow more dangerous than his usual suits. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. We're landing in 20 minutes, he said. You should see this. Isabella moved to the window he indicated, gasping at what she saw below. Endless turquoise water stretched to the horizon, dotted with small green islands. The ocean was so clear she could see the white sand beaches beneath the shallows, the darker patches where coral reefs grew. Everything was brilliant color and pristine beauty, nothing like the gray city they'd left behind. Where are we? She breathed. The Caribbean, a private island. Of course, Victor owned a private island. Isabella pressed her face closer to the glass, watching as they descended toward a small airstrip carved out of jungle. As they approached, she could make out a sprawling villa perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, all white stone and glass that caught the rising sun. The landing was smooth. When the door opened, humid tropical air rushed in, carrying the scent of salt water and exotic flowers. Isabella descended the stairs on shaky legs, still trying to process the impossible beauty around her. A jeep waited on the tarmac, driven by a man who greeted Victor in rapid Spanish before loading their bags. Victor replied in the same language, his fluency surprising Isabella even though it shouldn't have. Victor DeLuca spoke 5 languages and probably had business interests on every continent. You speak Spanish, she said as they climbed into the jeep. And Italian, French, Mandarin, and Russian. Victor's tone was matter-of-fact. Languages are useful in my line of work. His line of work? The careful euphemism for everything illegal and dangerous that funded this island, that jet, the penthouse, the life Isabella was now part of, whether she wanted to be or not. The drive to the villa took 10 minutes along a road that wound through lush vegetation. Isabella caught glimpses of pristine beaches, crystal clear water, colorful birds she couldn't name. Everything was vivid and alive in a way that made the city seem like a black and white photograph. The villa was even more stunning up close. Modern architecture blended seamlessly with natural surroundings. Infinity pools that seemed to merge with the ocean, outdoor spaces that erased the boundary between inside and out, floor-to-ceiling windows that invited the view inside. It was breathtaking. It was also completely isolated. Staff comes 3 times a week, Victor said as they entered the cool interior. Otherwise, we're alone. No guards, no business associates, no interruptions. The implications of that settled over Isabella like a weight. Alone with Victor for 2 weeks on a private island. No escape, no witnesses, just her husband and whatever intentions had driven this sudden trip. "Let me show you to your room," Victor continued, leading her up a curved staircase to the second floor. He opened a door revealing a massive bedroom decorated in whites and blues, French doors leading to a private balcony with ocean views. "Unless you'd prefer we share the master suite." The offer hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. "This is fine," Isabella said quickly. "Is it?" Victor moved closer, and she caught that scent again, cologne and danger. "Or are you just afraid to admit what you want?" "What I want?" Isabella's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Victor, 3 weeks ago you told me this marriage was business, that I should stay out of your way. Now you've brought me to a private island and you're implying— What exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything." Victor's hand came up, his fingers brushing her jaw with surprising gentleness. "I'm stating facts. I noticed you, Isabella, long before your father came to me desperate and drowning. I noticed you working your 2 jobs, trying to hold everything together while he destroyed himself. I saw your strength, your loyalty, your quiet resilience." Isabella's breath caught. "You were watching me?" "I was aware of you. There's a difference." His thumb traced her lower lip, and heat flooded through her despite everything. "When your father finally fell far enough, I made him an offer I knew he'd accept. Not because I needed a wife, because I wanted you." The confession should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like manipulation, like Victor had orchestrated everything, maneuvered all the pieces until Isabella had no choice but to end up exactly where he wanted her. "That's insane," she whispered. "That's honest." Victor dropped his hand but didn't step back. "I gave you 3 weeks to adjust, to settle into the reality of our arrangement. But Isabella, I'm not a patient man by nature, and I'm done pretending this is just business. You can't just decide that. You can't just change the rules because you feel like it. I can do whatever I want." The words should have been arrogant, but Victor said them like simple truth. "I'm Victor DeLuca. I built an empire from nothing. I control more money and power than most governments. When I want something, I take it. I'm not a thing you can take." "No." His smile was sharp, predatory. "You're my wife, which makes this much more complicated and infinitely more interesting." Isabella backed away, her legs hitting the bed. "This is crazy. You're crazy." "Probably." Victor moved to the door, pausing to look back at her. "Get some rest. We'll talk more later, when you're ready to stop running from what's happening between us." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Isabella sank onto the bed, her whole body trembling. This wasn't what she'd expected. Victor was supposed to be cold, distant, a husband in name only who left her alone in exchange for erasing her father's debts. Instead, he was here, focused on her, claiming he'd wanted her all along, that the marriage wasn't just business, that he intended to turn their contract into something real. Isabella stood and walked to the balcony, staring out at the impossibly blue ocean. The beauty around her felt surreal, like a gilded cage designed to seduce her into compliance. And Victor, dangerous, powerful, terrifying Victor, was the one holding the key. She thought about his words, about being noticed, being wanted, being pursued by a man who didn't pursue anything he wasn't certain he'd claim. Part of her wanted to believe it was manipulation, but another part, the part she was afraid to acknowledge, wondered what it would be like to truly be seen by Victor DeLuca, to be wanted by a man like that, to surrender to the dangerous heat she felt every time he looked at her. No. Isabella gripped the balcony railing hard enough to hurt. She couldn't think like that. Victor was a criminal. He'd bought her. He'd orchestrated everything, stripped away her choices, bound her to him through a contract she'd had no real power to refuse. Wanting him back would be insane, wouldn't it? Isabella spent the rest of the day in her room, too overwhelmed to face Victor. A staff member brought lunch, fresh fish, tropical fruit, food that tasted like sunshine and made her realize how long it had been since she'd eaten properly. She forced herself to finish everything, needing the strength. At sunset, someone knocked on her door. "Miss Isabella?" An older woman with kind eyes and the same accent as the driver stood in the hallway. "Mr. DeLuca requests you join him for dinner on the terrace in 1 hour. He asked me to help you prepare if you'd like." It wasn't really a request. Isabella recognized a command when she heard one, even wrapped in politeness. An hour later, she descended the stairs wearing a simple white sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Her hands shook slightly as she walked through the villa toward the sound of the ocean. The terrace took her breath away. String lights created a canopy of stars above a table set for two, candles flickering in the warm breeze. The ocean stretched endlessly beyond, the setting sun painting everything in shades of orange and gold. And there was Victor, standing at the railing, looking out at the view. He'd changed into dark linen pants and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal muscled forearms. Casual, devastating. He turned when he heard her approach, and the way he looked at her made Isabella's heart stutter. "You're beautiful," he said simply. "Victor, join me." He pulled out her chair, waiting until she reluctantly sat before taking his own seat. "I thought we could start over, get to know each other properly." "By kidnapping me to a private island?" "By removing distractions." Victor poured wine into both their glasses. "In the city, I'm always working, always managing fires, handling business, maintaining control. Here, there's only us. No interruptions. No pretending." "What if I don't want this?" "Then tell me." Victor leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Tell me you feel nothing when I look at you. Tell me you haven't wondered what it would be like between us. Lie to me, Isabella, and I'll put you back on that jet tomorrow. Send you wherever you want to go. Set you free." The offer hung between them, real and terrifying, because Isabella couldn't lie. Not convincingly. Not when her body betrayed her every time Victor came close. When her pulse raced and heat pooled low in her stomach, and she found herself wondering what those elegant, dangerous hands would feel like on her skin. "I can't," she whispered. "Can't what?" "Can't tell you I feel nothing." The admission felt like defeat and liberation at once. "But Victor, you scare me. The things you do, the world you live in, I don't belong there." "You belong where I say you belong." His hand covered hers on the table, warm and strong. "And I say you belong here, with me." Not as a contract or a transaction, as my wife, my partner, my equal. "Equal?" Isabella laughed without humor. "How can we be equal when you hold all the power?" "Do I?" Victor's thumb stroked across her knuckles. "Because right now you have more power over me than anyone else alive. You could destroy me, Isabella. All you'd have to do is walk away." "You just said you'd send me wherever I want to go." "I would. That's the problem." Victor's expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. "I told myself this marriage was strategic, a way to clear a debt and acquire a beautiful, intelligent woman who could play the role of my wife in public. But the truth is, I've wanted you from the moment I first saw you, and now that you're mine, the thought of letting you go is intolerable." Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. Stockholm Syndrome or manipulation or both. But looking into Victor's eyes, seeing genuine vulnerability beneath the control, she couldn't deny the pull between them. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Everything." Victor raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent electricity through her entire body. "Your time. Your attention. Your honesty. A real chance at making this marriage something neither of us expected. And if it doesn't work, then at least we'll know. At least we'll have tried." His smile was crooked, almost boyish. "I'm not promising it will be easy. My world is dangerous, complicated. But I promise you'll never be alone in it. I protect what's mine, Isabella. And you're mine now." The possessiveness should have offended her. Instead, it stirred something primal and dangerous. Something that wanted to belong to Victor DeLuca, to be claimed and protected and desired by a man powerful enough to make the world bend to his will. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay? Okay, we can try, get to know each other, See if there's something real here beyond the contract. Isabella met his eyes directly. But Victor, if you hurt me, if this is just some game to you, I won't forgive you. I know. Victor's grip on her hand tightened, and I'm asking you to trust me anyway, to take the risk, to see where this goes. They ate dinner as the sun finished setting, painting the sky in impossible purples and pinks. Victor asked her questions about her childhood, her dreams before her father's addiction consumed everything, what she'd wanted to be before necessity forced her into dead-end jobs. He listened like her answers mattered, like she was the most interesting person he'd ever met. And slowly, carefully, Isabella began to ask her own questions. How Victor had built his empire, what drove him, whether he ever regretted the path he'd chosen. Every day, Victor admitted, surprising her with his honesty. But regret doesn't change anything. I made choices, some necessary, some I wish I could take back. But they made me who I am. And who I am is someone strong enough to protect you from the consequences of your father's mistakes. Is that what you think you're doing? Protecting me? Among other things. His smile turned heated. Protection is just the beginning. After dinner, they walked along the beach, waves lapping at their feet. The moon had risen, turning everything silver and dreamlike. Isabella felt untethered from reality, like she'd stepped into someone else's life, one with private islands and beautiful men who looked at her like she was precious. What happens when we go back, she asked, to the city, to real life? Does this end? This is real life. Victor stopped walking, turning to face her. Isabella, I'm not playing pretend on this island. I'm showing you what we could have, what I want us to have. When we return, yes, things will be complicated. My work will require attention. There will be dangers I need to shield you from, but the foundation we build here, that's real, that's permanent. How can you be sure? Because I've never wanted anything as much as I want this, as much as I want you. He kissed her then, finally, pulling her against him as his mouth claimed hers. And Isabella, despite every rational thought screaming that this was wrong, kissed him back. Let herself drown in the heat and hunger, in the feeling of Victor's hands in her hair, his body hard against hers, the low sound he made when she opened to him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor pressed his forehead to hers. Tell me you feel that, he demanded. I feel it. Isabella's hands fisted in his shirt, holding him close. God help me. I feel it. Then stop fighting it. Stop fighting us. And there, on a moonlit beach with the ocean singing behind them, Isabella made her choice. She stopped fighting, stopped questioning, stopped protecting herself from the dangerous, impossible attraction to the man who'd bought her, and was now offering her something that looked dangerously like love. She kissed Victor again, deeper this time, surrendering to the heat between them. His hands roamed her back, her waist, pulling her impossibly closer as the kiss turned desperate. When he finally lifted her into his arms, carrying her back toward the villa, Isabella didn't protest. She'd made her choice. For better or worse, she was giving Victor DeLuca what he wanted, everything. Victor carried Isabella through the villa, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could feel it against his chest. The reality of what was happening crashed over her in waves. She was being carried to bed by her husband, the man who'd bought her like property 3 weeks ago, the crime lord who'd just confessed he'd orchestrated everything because he wanted her. She should stop this, should demand he put her down, should retreat to her separate room in the safety of distance. But her body had other ideas, her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried against his shoulder where he smelled like expensive cologne and salt air, and something uniquely him. Victor climbed the stairs with easy strength, but instead of turning toward the master suite, he carried her to her room, gently setting her on her feet beside the bed. The unexpected gentleness made her breath catch. I'm not going to seduce you tonight, he said quietly, his hands framing her face. As much as I want to. As much as every part of me is screaming to finish what we started on that beach. Isabella blinked up at him, confused and, if she was honest, disappointed. Then why? Because when I finally have you, Isabella, I want you completely certain, not swept up in moonlight and romance, not confused about what this is. His thumb traced her lower lip and heat pooled low in her stomach. I want you to choose me with clear eyes and a clear head, to know exactly what you're saying yes to. And what am I saying yes to? Me. All of me. The good and the terrible. The empire I've built and the blood it cost to build it. The dangers that come with being my wife. The enemies who would hurt you to hurt me. Victor's expression was fierce. I need you to understand what you're walking into before we cross that line. You're trying to scare me away. I'm trying to be honest. For once in my life, with someone who matters, I'm trying to tell the whole truth. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, tender and devastating. Sleep. Tomorrow we start this properly. I'll show you who I really am. Then you can decide if you still want this. He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Isabella stood frozen for a long moment, her body still humming with unfulfilled desire, her mind reeling from everything that had happened. She changed mechanically, pulling on a silk nightgown that had appeared in her closet, more evidence of Victor's thoroughness. When she finally crawled into bed, she expected to lie awake for hours, too wired to sleep. Instead, exhaustion pulled her under almost immediately, her dreams filled with gray eyes and dangerous promises. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the French doors she'd forgotten to close. Isabella stretched, disoriented until memory returned in a rush. The island, Victor, the kiss on the beach that had set her entire world on fire. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The housekeeper from last night entered carrying a tray laden with fresh fruit, pastries, and coffee that smelled like heaven. Good morning, Miss Isabella. Mr. DeLuca asks if you'll join him for breakfast on the lower terrace in half an hour. He suggests something comfortable for the day's activities. Activities? Isabella's stomach fluttered with nerves and anticipation. What kind of activities? The woman's smile was knowing. Mr. DeLuca didn't share details, but I'd recommend your swimsuit and something you can move easily in. After she left, Isabella picked at the breakfast, managing some fruit and half a pastry before her nerves made eating impossible. She dressed in a simple turquoise bikini covered by white linen shorts and a loose tank top, pulling her hair into a ponytail and foregoing makeup. If Victor wanted to show her who he really was, she might as well be comfortable. She found him on the lower terrace, dressed in dark swim trunks and nothing else. Isabella's steps faltered at the sight of him, all lean muscle and bronze skin, a tapestry of scars across his torso that told stories of violence survived. He was beautiful and terrifying, and she couldn't stop staring. Good morning. Victor's smile was warm, almost boyish in the morning light. Did you sleep well? Better than expected. Isabella forced herself to look at his face instead of his chest. You? Not particularly. I spent most of the night thinking about kissing you on that beach. He moved closer, his hand finding her waist and pulling her against him, and regretting my decision to be noble about it. You could always change your mind. Don't tempt me. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath warm on her lips. I have plans for today. Things I want to show you, but if you keep looking at me like that, we're never leaving this terrace. Heat flooded through her. How am I looking at you? Like you want to be devoured, Victor's voice dropped to a growl. And believe me, Isabella, I am more than happy to oblige. But first, breakfast. Then I show you something important. He led her to a table overlooking the ocean, where more food waited. Eggs, bacon, fresh juice, everything perfect and beautifully presented. They ate together, conversation flowing easier than Isabella expected. Victor asked about her college years, her brief attempt at becoming a teacher before her father's debts had forced her to drop out and work full-time. You wanted to teach? Victor set down his coffee, giving her his full attention. What subject? Literature. English. Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks. It sounds silly now. It sounds beautiful. You'd be good at it. You have that quality, patience combined with passion, the ability to see potential in things others overlook. Is that how you see me? Potential? I see you as already extraordinary. The potential is just for us, for what we could build together. Victor stood, offering his hand. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her down a winding path carved into the cliff face, steps leading to a private cove below. The beach was pristine, white sand meeting crystal clear water, completely sheltered from view. A boat waited at a small dock, sleek and fast, built for speed rather than comfort. "We're going out on the water?" Isabella asked. "Not far. There's a spot I want you to see." Victor helped her into the boat, his hands steady on her waist. "Trust me?" The question felt loaded with meaning beyond the simple boat ride. Isabella met his eyes and nodded. "I'm trying to." "That's all I can ask." Victor piloted the boat expertly, cutting through the water with practiced ease. The wind whipped Isabella's hair around her face, salt spray cooling her sun-warmed skin. After 20 minutes, Victor slowed the engine, guiding them toward a small rocky outcropping that jutted from the ocean. "What is this place?" Isabella asked as Victor anchored the boat. "The reason I bought the island." He produced snorkeling gear from a storage compartment, handing her a mask and fins. "The view from the surface is nice, but the real beauty is underneath." Isabella had never snorkeled before, but Victor was patient, showing her how to breathe through the tube, how to clear her mask if water got in. When they finally slipped into the water, she gasped at the temperature, perfectly warm like bathwater. Then Victor grabbed her hand and pulled her down. The world beneath the surface was breathtaking. Coral reefs in impossible colors, purple, orange, electric blue, swayed gently in the current. Fish darted everywhere, brilliant streaks of yellow and silver and red. The water was so clear, Isabella could see 50 feet in every direction, sunlight filtering down in shimmering columns. Victor pointed out different species, his knowledge surprising her. He showed her a sea turtle gliding majestically past, an octopus hiding in a crevice, a school of barracuda that made her heart race until he squeezed her hand reassuringly. They surfaced after what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, both breathing hard and grinning. "That was incredible," Isabella gasped, treading water beside the boat. "This is what I wanted you to see. Real beauty, natural beauty, not the manufactured world I usually live in." Victor swam closer, his legs brushing hers beneath the surface. "I come here when things get too dark, when the business, the violence, all of it becomes too much. This reminds me there's still something pure in the world, something worth protecting." "Victor," Isabella wasn't sure what to say to that raw honesty. "I'm not a good man, Isabella. I've done things that would horrify you, hurt people, destroyed lives, built my empire on blood and fear and ruthless calculation." His hands found her waist beneath the water, holding her steady. "But I'm not a monster either. I have lines I won't cross, people I protect. A code, even if it's one most people wouldn't understand." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to know who you're married to. Not the public face, not the businessman in expensive suits. The real me. The one who's killed men with his own hands when necessary. The one who will do absolutely anything to protect what's his." Isabella's pulse hammered. She should be terrified. Should be demanding he take her back to the villa, to the mainland, anywhere away from this confession. But looking into Victor's eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the violence, she couldn't summon fear. "Have you killed recently?" she asked quietly. "No, not in 3 years. I've built enough infrastructure, enough loyalty, that others handle the wet work now." His jaw tightened. "But I would, without hesitation, if someone threatened you." "Is that likely? Someone threatening me?" "In my world, always possible. That's why I need you to understand the risks. Why I brought you here, away from everything, to show you the truth before you decide if you really want this life." Isabella thought about that, about enemies in the shadows, about the constant danger, about being married to a man whose power came from fear and violence. She thought about her quiet life before, her simple dreams of teaching and normalcy. Then she thought about how Victor made her feel. Seen, valued, protected, desired in a way that had nothing to do with transactions and everything to do with genuine want. "I'm still here," she said finally. "Still choosing to stay. Does that make me crazy?" "Probably." Victor's smile was pure relief. "But it makes you perfect for me." He kissed her there, in the middle of the ocean, both of them treading water and clinging to each other. It was messy and awkward and absolutely perfect. When they broke apart, Isabella was laughing, swallowing seawater and not caring. They swam back to the boat, Victor helping her climb aboard before following. The ride back to the island was quieter, both of them lost in thought. Isabella kept stealing glances at him, this complicated, dangerous man who'd somehow become her husband. Back at the villa, they rinsed off in the outdoor shower, the experience oddly intimate despite both being in swimsuits. Victor's hands were careful as he helped her wash the salt from her hair, his touch gentle but his eyes heated. "I should warn you," he said as they dried off, "tonight is going to test my resolve significantly." "Why tonight specifically?" "Because we're having dinner on the yacht, anchored offshore, under the stars, completely alone, and you're going to look beautiful, and I'm going to want you desperately, and my nobility is going to be in very short supply." Isabella's stomach fluttered. "Maybe I don't want you to be noble." "Isabella." Her name was a warning and a prayer. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them." "What if I do mean them?" Victor crowded her against the shower wall, his body a line of heat against hers. "Then we need to have a very serious conversation about expectations and boundaries, because once I have you, I'm not letting go, ever. You need to be sure." "I'm getting there." Isabella's hands pressed against his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palms. "But Victor, you keep pushing me away, telling me to be sure, to think about it, to understand what I'm choosing. Maybe you need to stop protecting me from yourself and let me make my own decisions." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face. "You're right. You're absolutely right." He stepped back, creating distance that felt like a physical loss. "Tonight. We'll talk tonight, really talk. And then we'll see where things go." The rest of the day passed in a haze of anticipation. They had lunch together, Victor telling her stories about acquiring the island, about his childhood in Italy before his family immigrated to America, about building his first legitimate business before circumstances pulled him into darker waters. Isabella found herself fascinated by the contradictions in him, the man who could order violence without blinking but who spoke about his mother with reverence and grief, the criminal who owned politicians but who donated millions to children's hospitals under anonymous shells, the husband who'd bought her but who was now courting her like she was precious. As sunset approached, the housekeeper appeared with a garment bag. Inside was a dress that made Isabella's breath catch, deep emerald silk that would cling to every curve, elegant and sophisticated and utterly beautiful. "Mr. DeLuca had it made for you," the woman explained. "He said green would match your eyes." Isabella hadn't realized Victor had noticed her eye color. The attention to detail made her chest tighten with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. She dressed carefully, applying minimal makeup and leaving her hair down in loose waves. The dress fit perfectly, of course. Victor's thoroughness was almost supernatural. She slipped on delicate heels and studied herself in the mirror. She looked like someone else, someone confident and desirable and expensive, someone who belonged on a private island with a powerful man, someone who might actually be falling for her criminal husband. Victor was waiting at the dock, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal shirt that made his eyes look like smoke. His expression when he saw her was worth every moment of nerves. "You're stunning," he said simply, offering his hand to help her aboard the yacht. This wasn't the speedboat from earlier. This was a luxury vessel, all gleaming wood and brass, with a deck set for an intimate dinner. Candles flickered in hurricane glasses, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "You did all this?" Isabella asked. "I wanted tonight to be special." Victor guided her to her seat, his hand lingering on the small of her back. "I wanted you to feel valued, treasured, not like a transaction or an obligation." They ate slowly, the meal exquisite. Fresh lobster, perfectly cooked vegetables, wine that tasted like sunlight and honey. Between courses, they talked. Really talked. Isabella asked about his business, and Victor answered honestly, explaining the legitimate corporations that fronted the illegal operations, the careful balance of power and diplomacy that kept the peace, the enemies always circling. "Are you ever afraid?" she asked. "Every day. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive." Victor's fingers traced patterns on the back of her hand. "But I'm more afraid of losing this. Of losing you before I've really had you." "You have me, Victor. I'm your wife. On paper, I want more than paper, Isabella. I want everything." The word hung between them, heavy with promise and threat and possibility. Isabella's heart raced as Victor stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. The yacht rocked gently beneath them, the stars overhead impossibly bright. "Tell me what you want," Victor murmured against her ear. "No more deflecting, no more maybe. Tell me the truth." "I want—" Isabella's hands fisted in his shirt, holding him close. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to stop questioning everything. I want to just feel without thinking about consequences or what it means, or whether I'm making a terrible mistake." "Then stop thinking." Victor's mouth found her neck, trailing kisses that made her knees weak. "Just feel. Tell me what you feel right now." "Like I'm on fire. Like if you don't kiss me properly, I might actually die." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Well, we can't have that." This kiss was different from the others, deeper, more demanding. Victor's hands roamed her body with clear intent, learning her curves through the silk dress, making her gasp and arch against him. Isabella gave as good as she got, her fingers tangling in his hair, her teeth grazing his lower lip, drawing a groan from deep in his chest. "Bedroom," Victor growled against her mouth. "Now, before I take you right here on the deck." He didn't wait for an answer, sweeping her into his arms and carrying her below deck to a master cabin she hadn't seen before. The space was elegant and intimate, dominated by a massive bed covered in dark silk sheets. Victor set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "Last chance, Isabella. Last chance to change your mind. To say this is too fast, too soon, too complicated." "I don't want to change my mind." Isabella reached for his shirt, fingers working the buttons. "I want you. I've wanted you since that first night, even though I was terrified to admit it, even though it seemed insane to want the man who bought me. I didn't buy you." Victor's hands covered hers, stilling them. "I bought your freedom from your father's debts. But you, Isabella, you I'm earning, day by day, moment by moment, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Then he kissed her again, and there was no more talking. Only sensation, the slide of silk against skin, the heat of Victor's mouth on her throat, her shoulders, lower. The feeling of his hands finally touching her the way she'd been craving. Isabella let herself drown in it. In him. In the impossible reality that she was here, on a yacht anchored off a private island, giving herself to the dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become the center of her world in just 3 weeks. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in the dark cabin, the yacht rocking gently on calm waters. Victor's fingers traced lazy patterns on Isabella's bare shoulder, his other arm wrapped securely around her waist. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Not yet." Isabella shifted to look at him, studying his face in the moonlight filtering through the portholes. "Ask me again tomorrow." "I'll ask you every day for the rest of our lives." Victor pressed a kiss to her temple. "And hopefully, the answer stays the same." "Victor, what happens when we leave here? When we go back to reality?" "Reality doesn't change what's between us. It might complicate it, but it doesn't change it." His grip tightened possessively. "You're mine now, Isabella, in every way that matters, and I protect what's mine." That word, mine, you say it a lot. Because it's true, and because I need you to understand. I don't share. I don't compromise. You're my wife, my partner, and no one touches what belongs to me. The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it sent heat curling through her stomach. "I belong to myself too, you know." "Of course you do. But you're choosing to belong with me. There's a difference." Victor rolled, pinning her beneath him, his eyes intense. "Tell me you understand that, Isabella, that you're choosing this, choosing me, not because you're obligated or trapped, but because you want it." "I understand." Isabella cupped his face, feeling the roughness of stubble against her palms. "I'm choosing you, Victor. God help me, but I'm choosing this dangerous, complicated, impossible thing between us." "Thank God." He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, until they were both breathless. "Because I wasn't sure I could survive if you walked away." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other thoroughly, and afterward, wrapped in Victor's arms with the ocean singing outside, Isabella finally understood what she'd gotten herself into. She'd married a criminal, a man whose hands had ended lives and built empires, and now touched her with devastating gentleness. A man who was dangerous and protective and utterly, completely focused on her. And against all logic and reason, she was falling in love with him. The next week passed in a blur of sun-drenched days and passion-filled nights. Victor showed Isabella every corner of the island, shared pieces of himself he'd never shown anyone. They swam in hidden coves, explored jungle paths, made love on deserted beaches under the stars. But underneath the romance, Isabella began to notice things. The way Victor's phone buzzed constantly with messages he ignored. The tightness around his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. The conversations in rapid Italian he had with his security team during their brief visits to deliver supplies. Something was wrong, something he wasn't telling her. On their 8th night, Isabella confronted him over dinner on the villa's terrace. "What aren't you telling me?" Victor's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What do you mean?" "You've been tense for 2 days. Distracted. Something's happening back home and you're trying to shield me from it." Isabella set down her wine glass, meeting his eyes directly. "I thought we were past secrets." Victor was silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. Then he sighed, setting down his own fork. "You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't want to ruin this, our time here." "Ruin it how?" "There's a problem with a business rival. Alexei Volkov." Victor's expression darkened. "He's been making moves against my territory, testing boundaries, seeing how far he can push before I push back. And you need to go back. Handle it." "No, I've delegated. My second-in-command can manage the initial response." Victor reached across the table, taking her hand. "But Isabella, when we do return, things are going to be different, more dangerous. Volkov is ambitious and reckless. He doesn't follow the old rules. He'll look for weaknesses to exploit. Weaknesses like me. Like us. Like the fact that I care about you enough to be vulnerable." Victor's grip tightened. "That's why I needed this time. To make sure you understood what you're walking into. To prepare you for what comes next." Isabella's pulse quickened. "How dangerous is this Volkov?" "Extremely. He's former Russian military, connected to oligarchs who think they can buy their way into American territory. He's already responsible for 6 deaths in the past month, rivals who wouldn't yield to his demands." Victor's eyes were hard, cold in a way she hadn't seen since their wedding. "He's a problem that needs to be solved permanently." The implications of that made Isabella's stomach clench. "You're going to kill him." "If necessary, preferably I'll make it too expensive for him to continue his incursion, force him back to his own territory. But if he pushes..." Victor shrugged, the gesture casual despite the violence it implied. "Then yes, I'll do what's necessary to protect what's mine." There it was again, that possessive claim. But this time it came with the reality of what it meant. Victor would kill to keep her safe. Would wage war if someone threatened her. The thought should horrify her. Instead, some dark part of Isabella found it compelling. "When do we go back?" she asked. "We have 4 more days. I want to use them. Want to hold on to this before reality intrudes." Victor stood, moving around the table to pull her into his arms. "Dance with me." There was no music, but Isabella let him lead her in a slow waltz across the terrace, their bodies pressed close, moving together with the kind of synchronization that came from truly knowing each other. Victor's hand was warm on her lower back, his breath soft against her temple. "Whatever happens when we return," he murmured, "remember this. Remember us. Remember that everything I do, every choice I make, is to protect you, to protect this." "I'll remember." Isabella rose on her toes, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "But Victor, I'm not fragile. Don't treat me like I'll break the moment things get difficult." His laugh was low and appreciative. "Believe me, no, you're not fragile. You're steel wrapped in silk, Isabella. You're stronger than you realize. Then trust me. Include me. Don't try to shield me from every hard thing." "I'll try." Victor's arms tightened around her. "But it goes against every instinct I have. Protecting you is hardwired into my DNA now." They swayed together under the stars, and Isabella let herself sink into the moment. Whatever was coming, Volkov, danger, the reality of being married to a crime lord, she'd face it. Because walking away from Victor now was impossible. She'd made her choice. And she was going to see it through, no matter the cost. The remaining 4 days on the island passed too quickly, each moment tinged with the bittersweet knowledge that their sanctuary was temporary. Victor grew increasingly distracted, his phone calls more frequent despite his efforts to hide them from Isabella. She caught him once, standing on the beach at dawn, speaking in rapid Russian to someone on the other end. The conversation sounded heated, dangerous, and when he noticed her watching, the expression on his face had made her blood run cold. That was the Victor who'd built an empire on fear, the one who could end lives with a word. Their last night arrived with storm clouds gathering on the horizon, the air heavy and electric. Victor had arranged one final dinner on the yacht, insisting they needed to mark the end of their honeymoon properly, even though neither of them felt celebratory. Isabella wore a red dress this time, the color of wine and warning. Victor's eyes had darkened when he saw her, his hands possessive on her waist as he helped her aboard. "You're trying to kill me," he murmured against her ear. "Just reminding you what you're fighting for when we get back," she replied, and felt him smile against her skin. The yacht cut through increasingly choppy water, heading away from the island toward open sea. Victor had dismissed the crew, piloting the vessel himself with easy competence. Isabella watched him from the deck, admiring the sure way he handled the controls, the way wind whipped his dark hair, the dangerous elegance of him. "How far out are we going?" she called over the rising wind. "Far enough for privacy. There's something I need to tell you, and I don't want any chance of being overheard." That sounded ominous. Isabella's stomach tightened as Victor anchored the yacht and came to find her, leading her below deck to the main cabin. He poured them both drinks, whiskey, neat, and handed her a glass before settling beside her on the leather sofa. "Whatever you're about to say, you're scaring me," Isabella said. "Good instincts." Victor drained half his drink in one swallow. "Isabella, when we return tomorrow, things are going to move fast. Volkov has been more aggressive than I initially realized. He's not just testing boundaries. He's planning something big." "How do you know?" "I have sources inside his organization. One of them contacted me 2 days ago with intelligence that Volkov is planning to make a move against me personally. He thinks taking me out will destabilize my empire enough for him to swoop in and claim my territory." Isabella's hand trembled, whiskey sloshing in her glass. "He's going to try to kill you." "He's going to try. He won't succeed." Victor's confidence was absolute. "But Isabella, there's more. He knows about you, about our marriage. My source says Volkov sees you as my weakness, a vulnerability he can exploit." The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. "What does that mean?" "It means you're in danger, real danger. The kind I can't completely protect you from unless I lock you away somewhere, and even then," Victor set down his glass, turning to face her fully. "I need you to understand something. I've made enemies. Dangerous men who would hurt you just to hurt me. Being my wife puts a target on your back that will never completely go away. You're telling me this now? After everything?" Isabella stood abruptly, pacing the confines of the cabin. "After I chose you, after I gave myself to you, after I fell..." She cut herself off, but the damage was done. Victor was on his feet instantly, catching her wrist and pulling her around to face him. "After you fell what, Isabella? Say it." "It doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. Say it." Isabella wrenched her arm free, angry tears burning her eyes. "After I fell in love with you, you idiot. After I chose this life knowing it was dangerous, knowing you were dangerous, after I decided you were worth the risk. Now you're trying to scare me away?" "I'm trying to give you the full truth before we walk back into hell." Victor's hands framed her face, his thumbs wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "And you love me?" "Don't sound so surprised. You've been seducing me for 2 weeks." "I've been honest with you for 2 weeks. There's a difference." Victor's smile was fierce, possessive. "Say it again. Tell me you love me." "Why? So you can use it against me? So I can tell you the same thing, you infuriating woman?" He kissed her hard, desperately. "I love you, Isabella. I've loved you since I first saw you 3 years ago, serving coffee at that diner while your father gambled away your future. I've loved you through every day of watching you struggle, every moment of wanting you and not being able to have you. I orchestrated our marriage because I'm a selfish bastard who couldn't stand the thought of you belonging to anyone else." Isabella's breath caught. 3 years? You've been watching me for 3 years? I told you I was aware of you. That was a polite way of saying I was obsessed. Victor's hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. I know your coffee order. I know you read romance novels on your lunch breaks. I know you volunteer at the children's hospital every Saturday morning you can spare. I know everything about you, and I fell in love with every detail. It should feel invasive, creepy even. But looking into Victor's eyes, seeing the raw vulnerability there, Isabella could only feel desired, cherished, completely, utterly claimed. You're insane, she whispered. Completely. But I'm your brand of insane, apparently. Victor kissed her again, gentler this time. I love you, Isabella, and I will burn the entire world down before I let Volkov or anyone else hurt you. That's not exactly reassuring. It's the truth. You wanted honesty. That's honest. I'm a dangerous man who's committed terrible acts in the name of power and survival. But you make me want to be better. To build something that isn't just empire and fear, you make me want a real life. Isabella wrapped her arms around his neck, holding him close. Then let's build it, together. Stop trying to protect me from everything and let me be your partner. Really your partner. Not some delicate thing you keep locked away. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking to stand beside you instead of behind you. I'm asking you to trust me the way you're asking me to trust you. Isabella pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I love you, Victor, flaws and violence and criminal empire included. But if this is going to work, you have to stop treating me like I'm breakable. Victor studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're right. You're absolutely right. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth. Okay. Partners, equals. But Isabella, if things go bad, if Volkov makes his move and you're in danger, you have to promise me you'll listen when I tell you to run, when I tell you to hide. Can you promise me that? Only if you promise to come back to me. No heroic sacrifices, no throwing yourself on grenades. Isabella's fingers dug into his shoulders. We survive together or not at all? Deal. Victor sealed it with a kiss that turned heated, urgent, both of them clinging to each other as the yacht rocked beneath them and thunder rumbled in the distance. They made love with desperate intensity, like they could somehow ward off the coming danger through sheer physical connection. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, they lay listening to rain hammer against the deck above. Tell me about Volkov, Isabella said quietly. If I'm your partner, I need to know what we're facing. Victor was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his arm tightening around her. Alexei Volkov is former Spetsnaz, Russian Special Forces. He came to America 5 years ago with money from oligarchs who wanted a foothold in our markets. Started with legitimate businesses, restaurants, nightclubs, then expanded into protection rackets, smuggling, arms dealing. He's ambitious, ruthless, and he doesn't respect the established order. Meaning you. Meaning the families who've controlled this city for decades. We have rules, territories, agreements that keep the peace and keep civilian casualties minimal. Volkov doesn't care about any of that. He sees rules as weakness to exploit. Victor's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder absently. 6 months ago, he approached me with a proposal. He wanted to partner on a weapons deal. I refused. I don't deal in weapons. Too much heat, too much risk. He took that refusal as an insult. So this is about wounded pride? It's about power. In our world, respect is everything. By refusing him publicly, I made him look weak to his backers. Now he has to respond or lose credibility. Victor shifted, propping himself on one elbow to look down at her. He's been systematically attacking my operations. Nothing major yet. A shipment intercepted here, a warehouse fire there, testing my defenses. Looking for weak points. And he found me. He found us. The fact that I married you, that I took you on a honeymoon, that I've been absent from the city for 2 weeks, all of that tells him I care, that you matter. And anything that matters to me is a weapon he can use. Isabella's blood ran cold. So what do? We go back, I deal with Volkov before he can make his move, and you stay safe, surrounded by security, until the threat is neutralized. Victor's expression hardened. I have a compound in the mountains, remote, heavily guarded. I'm sending you there tomorrow." "Absolutely not." Isabella sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. "You just said we're partners, equals. Now you want to ship me off to some fortress while you handle everything? I want you alive, Isabella. That's not negotiable. Neither is me hiding while you fight my battles." Her jaw set stubbornly. "I'm not some damsel in a tower, Victor. I'm your wife. Where you go, I go. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real danger. Men with guns who won't hesitate to put a bullet in you to get to me. Then teach me to shoot back." Victor stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "What?" "You heard me? If I'm going to be in danger anyway, teach me to defend myself. Teach me how to survive in your world instead of just hiding from it." Isabella grabbed his hand, holding it tight. "I'm not running, Victor. I'm not spending the rest of our marriage locked in a safe house while you risk your life. We're in this together." "You're insane." "I'm in love with a crime lord. Insanity is a given." Isabella leaned forward, kissing him firmly. "Please, trust me enough to let me fight beside you, in whatever way I can." Victor closed his eyes, jaw working as he fought some internal battle. When he finally opened them again, the look in them made Isabella shiver. "If I agree to this, and that's a massive if, you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no improvising, no heroics. You follow orders like your life depends on it, because it will. Understood?" "Understood." "And you train, starting tomorrow. Defense, weapons, situational awareness. Everything." Victor's hand cupped the back of her neck possessively. "I won't let you be a liability, Isabella. If you're going to insist on being involved, you'll be an asset, capable of protecting yourself when I can't be there." "I can do that." "You'd better, because if anything happens to you, if Volkov or anyone else hurts you, there won't be enough left of this city to bury when I'm done." The promise was delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted it. This was the man she'd married, the one capable of apocalyptic violence, the one who loved her enough to destroy everything for her safety. Isabella should be horrified. Instead, she pulled him down into another kiss, pouring every ounce of her love and trust and determination into it. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered against his mouth, "Then let's make sure nothing happens. Together." They sailed back to the island as dawn broke, the storm having passed during the night. The villa looked different somehow, less like paradise, more like the eye of an approaching hurricane. Isabella packed mechanically, folding away the beautiful dresses and swimsuits, armor she wouldn't need back in the real world. The flight home was tense and quiet. Victor spent most of it on his phone, issuing orders in 3 different languages, his expression growing darker with each call. Isabella tried not to eavesdrop, but she caught enough to understand things were worse than he'd let on. Volkov had made moves during their absence, aggressive moves. When they finally landed at the private airport, a convoy of black SUVs waited. Not the single car from their departure, but 5 vehicles, each filled with armed security. Victor's hand was iron on Isabella's lower back as he guided her into the middle vehicle, his body positioned between her and any potential threats. "Is all this really necessary?" she asked as they pulled away from the airport. "After what I learned on the flight?" "Yes." Victor's expression was grim. "Volkov hit one of my warehouses last night, killed 3 of my men, left a message spray-painted on the wall." "What kind of message?" "The king is dead. Long live the new king." Victor's hands fisted on his thighs. "He's declaring war, making it public. By tomorrow, every criminal organization in the city will know he's coming for me." "What happens now?" "Now I respond, quickly and decisively." Victor turned to her, his eyes hard. "And you keep your promise. You do exactly what I say, when I say it. No arguments." "I promised, didn't I?" The convoy didn't go to the penthouse. Instead, they drove to a building Isabella had never seen before. A converted warehouse in an industrial district, windows dark, exterior nondescript. But when they entered through a reinforced steel door, the interior was anything but ordinary. It was a command center. Computer banks lined one wall, showing security feeds from dozens of locations. A conference table dominated the center of the space, surrounded by hard-looking men and a few women who all radiated dangerous competence. These were Victor's people, his real inner circle. Conversation stopped when they entered. Every eye turned to Isabella, assessing, calculating. She felt exposed in her travel clothes, aware she was the weakness Victor's enemies would exploit. "Everyone, this is my wife, Isabella." Victor's hand remained possessive on her waist. "She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her dies screaming. Make sure that message gets to Volkov loud and clear." A ripple of acknowledgement went through the room. Then a man stepped forward, tall, built like a tank, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "Mrs. DeLuca, I'm Marcus Chen, head of security. The boss says you want training." Isabella straightened her spine, meeting his skeptical gaze directly. "That's right. You ever fired a gun before?" "No." "Ever been in a fight? Does slapping my drunk father count?" A few people in the room chuckled. Marcus's expression didn't change. "We've got a lot of work to do then. Hope you're a fast learner because we don't have much time." Victor kissed Isabella's temple. "Go with Marcus. He'll start your training while I deal with the Volkov situation. Stay here until I come get you. This facility is secure." "Victor, please, Isabella, let me handle this part. You're not ready yet." His eyes pleaded with her to understand. "Give me this. Give me knowing you're safe while I do what needs to be done." Isabella wanted to argue, but the fear beneath his controlled exterior stopped her. He was terrified for her, barely holding it together beneath the calm facade. So she nodded, rising on her toes to kiss him briefly. "Come back to me." "Always." Victor held her close for one more moment before releasing her to Marcus's care. "Take care of my wife, Chen. She's more important than anything else in this building." "On my life, boss." Isabella followed Marcus through a door at the back of the command center, down a hallway to what looked like a private gym. But this wasn't for casual workouts. This was a training facility. Mats on the floor, punching bags hanging from the ceiling, a shooting range visible through a window at the far end. "Okay, Mrs. DeLuca." "Isabella, please," Marcus nodded. "Isabella, here's the reality. You're starting from zero, and Volkov could make his move any day. We need to get you to functional fast, which means intensive training, long hours. It's going to hurt, you're going to be exhausted, and there's no guarantee it'll be enough if things go bad." "You sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure." "Why?" "Most women married to men like Victor would be perfectly happy hiding behind the security detail." Isabella thought about that, about the easy answer versus the true one. "Because I love him, and because I refuse to be the weakness that gets him killed. I need to be strong enough to survive his world, strong enough that he doesn't have to choose between protecting me and protecting himself." Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, the expression transforming his stern face. "You're going to be good for him." "All right, let's start with basics. Self-defense first, weapons second. Come at me." "What?" "Pretend I'm attacking you. Come at me like you mean it." Isabella hesitated, then threw herself at Marcus with everything she had. He sidestepped easily, catching her arm and gently redirecting her momentum until she stumbled past him. Predictable. Sloppy. No technique. Marcus helped her regain her balance. "But you committed. Didn't pull the attack. That's good. That's the attitude we need. Now, let me show you how to actually fight." The next 8 hours were the most grueling of Isabella's life. Marcus was patient but relentless, drilling her over and over on basic strikes, defensive positions, how to break holds, where to aim to cause maximum damage. Her muscles screamed. Sweat soaked through her clothes. Twice she vomited from exhaustion, and Marcus simply waited until she was done before continuing. But slowly, painfully, Isabella began to understand, began to feel the movements becoming muscle memory, began to see the patterns in how people moved, where the vulnerabilities were. "Better," Marcus said after she'd successfully executed a combination for the first time. "You're thinking too much still, but the foundation's there. We'll drill it until it's instinct. Take 5 minutes, then we move to firearms." Isabella collapsed against the wall, gulping water and trying to ignore her shaking hands. Her phone buzzed, a text from Victor. "How's training? Are you okay?" She smiled despite her exhaustion and typed back, "Alive. Sore. Missing you." "How's the war?" "Complicated, but manageable. I'll tell you everything tonight." Be safe, my love. The casual endearment made her chest tight with emotion. 2 weeks ago, this man had been a stranger. Now he was everything. Marcus returned with a handgun, the weapon gleaming dully in the fluorescent light. This is a Glock 19, 9mm, 15-round magazine, reliable and relatively easy to control. You're going to learn to field strip it, clean it, load it, and shoot it accurately. By the end of the week, you'll sleep with this under your pillow. Isabella took the gun gingerly, surprised by its weight. It's heavier than I expected. That's the weight of life and death in your hands. Respect it. Fear it. But don't hesitate to use it if you have to. Marcus guided her hands into proper position. Now, let me teach you how to not shoot yourself. The range time was intense. The noise, even with ear protection, was overwhelming. The recoil shocked through her arms, making accuracy nearly impossible at first. But Marcus was patient, adjusting her stance, her grip, her breathing, until finally, she hit the center mass of the target. Good! Again, empty the magazine into that target. Make every shot count. By the time Victor appeared in the doorway hours later, Isabella had fired hundreds of rounds. Her hands hurt, her ears rang despite the protection, and she could barely lift her arms, but she could consistently hit what she was aiming at, and that felt like victory. How's she doing? Victor asked Marcus. Better than expected. She's got natural aptitude and she doesn't quit. Give me a week and she'll be dangerous. Give me a month and she'll be lethal. Marcus handed the gun to Isabella. Take this with you. Keep it close. The boss will show you where he wants you to carry it. Victor's expression was complicated as he approached. Pride mixed with regret. Love tangled with fear. Come on, let's get you home. You need food and rest. Home. Isabella realized he meant the penthouse, the place that had felt like a cage 3 weeks ago. Now walking out to the waiting SUV with Victor's arm around her shoulders, it felt different, like a fortress instead of a prison, a place they'd defend together. The ride was quiet, both of them exhausted. At the penthouse, Victor ordered food while Isabella showered, washing away the sweat and gunpowder residue and fear. When she emerged, dressed in soft clothes, she found Victor on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. Tell me what happened today, she said, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Victor covered her hands with his body tense. Volkov's accelerating his timeline. My sources say he's planning something big for the end of the week, something public. He wants to make a statement, prove he's the future and I'm the past. What kind of statement? I don't know yet, but Isabella... Victor turned in her arms, his face grave. I think he's going to come after you. Try to take you to force my hand. It's what I would do in his position. Eliminate the one thing that could make me act irrationally. Then we don't let him take me. Isabella cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. We prepare. We stay smart. We survive this together, like we promised. I love you. Victor kissed her desperately. I love you so much it terrifies me. Because love is leverage. Love is weakness, and Volkov will use it without hesitation. Then we make our love our strength instead. Isabella kissed him back, fierce and determined. We show him that we're stronger together than he expects, that I'm not some helpless victim waiting to be saved. Victor smiled against her mouth, sad and proud at once. You're magnificent, terrifying and magnificent and completely mine. Completely yours, Isabella agreed. Now feed me. I'm starving, and tomorrow I train again. They ate on the terrace, talking strategy and contingencies, planning for threats that felt surreal but were all too real. And later, in Victor's bed, their bed now, they made love with desperate intensity, both acutely aware that their time might be running out. Neither of them said it out loud, but both of them knew. The storm was coming, and when it broke, blood would spill. They just had to make sure it wasn't theirs. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of training, strategy sessions, and mounting tension. Isabella woke before dawn each morning, her body screaming in protest from the previous day's work, only to push through another brutal session with Marcus. Hand-to-hand combat until her knuckles bled through the wraps. Firearms training until she could draw and fire in under 2 seconds. Tactical awareness drills that taught her to see exits, identify threats, and move through spaces like the target she'd become. Victor was rarely at the penthouse. He spent his days at the command center coordinating responses to Volkov's increasingly bold attacks. Another warehouse burned. 2 more of Victor's men were hospitalized after an ambush. The war was escalating, and the whole city could feel it. Even civilians sensed something dangerous brewing in the shadows. On the 4th morning, Isabella arrived at the training facility to find Victor waiting instead of Marcus. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. His normally pristine appearance rumpled, but when he saw her, his expression softened. "How are you holding up?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "I should be asking you that. You look like you haven't slept in days." Isabella touched the stubble on his jaw, worry gnawing at her. "Talk to me, Victor. What's happening?" "We got a break. One of Volkov's lieutenants wants to defect. Says he's got information about the big move Volkov's planning." Victor's hands ran up and down her back, like he needed the physical reassurance she was real. "I'm meeting him tonight. Neutral territory. If his intel is good, we might be able to get ahead of this." "That sounds like a trap." "It probably is. But I don't have a choice. I need to know what Volkov's planning." Victor pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I want you to stay here today. The whole day. Don't leave for any reason." "Victor, please, Isabella. I have a bad feeling about this, about all of it. Just give me today. Stay here, stay safe, and let me handle this meeting." His jaw tightened. "I've tripled security around the building. Marcus will be with you the entire time, but promise me you won't leave." The fear in his voice made her chest ache. "I promise. But you promise me something too. You come back. No matter what happens at that meeting, you come back to me. Always." Victor kissed her deeply, thoroughly, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. "I love you. Remember that. No matter what happens, I love you." The ominous tone made Isabella's skin prickle with unease. But before she could question it, Victor was gone, leaving her alone in the training facility with a growing sense of dread. Marcus appeared moments later, his expression grim. "Boss wants you to run through scenarios today. Hostage situations, ambush responses, active shooter protocols. The fun stuff." He's really worried, isn't he? He's terrified. I've known Victor DeLuca for 12 years, and I've never seen him like this. He's in love with you, and it's making him vulnerable in ways that could get him killed. Marcus gestured toward the mats. "Which is why we're going to make sure you can handle yourself if the worst happens. Come on." They drilled relentlessly. Marcus threw scenario after scenario at her, being grabbed from behind, having a weapon pointed at her, being cornered with no clear exit. Each time, Isabella had to react, had to find the weakness and exploit it. Her body moved on instinct now, muscle memory overriding panic. "Better," Marcus said after she'd successfully disarmed him for the 3rd time. "You're thinking like a survivor now, like someone who refuses to be a victim." "I can't be his weakness," Isabella panted, wiping sweat from her face. "I won't be the reason he gets hurt." "You're not his weakness, you're his strength. He just doesn't see it yet." Marcus handed her a bottle of water. "The boss thinks love makes you vulnerable, and it does. But it also makes you fight harder, think faster, refuse to give up. You make him stronger, Isabella. You just have to make him believe it." They were taking a brief break when Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression went cold. "We need to move. Now." "What's wrong?" The meeting was a setup. Victor's team was ambushed. He's alive but injured, and Volkov's men are hunting him through the warehouse district. Marcus was already moving, grabbing weapons from a locked cabinet. "The boss is heading to a safe house on the waterfront. We're going to meet him there." "You said I wasn't supposed to leave." "Plans change. That was before your husband was bleeding and running for his life." Marcus thrust a bulletproof vest at her. "Put this on. Keep your weapon ready. And Isabella, if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." "Understood." Isabella's hands shook as she strapped on the vest, the weight of it foreign and terrifying. This was real. Victor was hurt, being hunted, and she was about to walk into the middle of a war zone. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to let the professionals handle it, but Victor was her husband, her partner, and she'd promised to stand beside him. "Understood," she said, checking her Glock with movements that were becoming automatic. Let's go. The drive to the waterfront was tense and fast, Marcus weaving through traffic while speaking rapid fire into his phone, coordinating with other security teams. Isabella sat in the back, weapon in hand, watching the city blur past and trying to control her racing heart. How bad is he hurt? She asked. Gunshot wound to the shoulder, through and through, so that's good. But he's lost blood and Volkov's got teams combing the area. Marcus took a corner hard enough to make the tires squeal. The safe house is secure. Once we get him there, we can regroup. They pulled up to a nondescript building wedged between abandoned warehouses, the waterfront visible beyond. Marcus killed the engine and turned to Isabella. Stay behind me. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. If shooting starts, get down and stay down unless you have a clear shot. Remember your training. I remember. They exited the vehicle and Marcus led her quickly toward a rusted metal door. He knocked in a specific pattern, 3 quick, 2 slow, 3 quick, and the door opened immediately. Another security guard ushered them inside, his weapon drawn and ready. The interior was Spartan but functional, concrete floors, minimal furniture, windows boarded up, and there, slumped against a wall with blood soaking through his shirt, was Victor. Isabella, her name was rough, pained. You shouldn't be here. I told Marcus to keep you at the facility. And I told him that wasn't happening. Isabella dropped to her knees beside him, hands hovering over his wound, afraid to touch and cause more damage. How bad is it? I've had worse. Victor's smile was pained but genuine. But I'm not going to lie. It hurts like hell. A woman appeared from a back room, older, gray-haired, carrying a medical kit. Move aside, dear. Let me work. Isabella shifted but kept hold of Victor's uninjured hand as the woman, a doctor clearly, cut away his shirt and began cleaning the wound. Victor's jaw clenched against the pain, but he didn't make a sound, his eyes fixed on Isabella's face. The meeting was a trap, he said quietly. Volkov's lieutenant was bait. They were waiting for me. If my team hadn't been paranoid enough to scout the location first, I'd be dead. But you're not. You're here. You're alive. Isabella squeezed his hand, trying to pour all her love and relief into the touch. That's what matters. He knows about this location. It's only a matter of time before he sends people here. Victor winced as the doctor probed the wound. We need to move as soon as I'm patched up. Get to the secondary location. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Boss, we've got a problem. Volkov's men just hit 2 of our other safe houses simultaneously. They're systematically eliminating your bolt holes. How many locations have we got left? 3. But if they hit those the same way? Marcus didn't need to finish the sentence. Victor's expression hardened despite the pain. Then we don't run. We end this. Tonight. He looked at the doctor. How fast can you patch me up enough to function? I can stop the bleeding and stabilize you, but you need surgery to properly repair the damage. And painkillers will make you sluggish. No painkillers. I need to be sharp. Victor's voice was absolute. Just stop the bleeding. The doctor muttered something in what sounded like Russian, but complied, working quickly to clean and bandage the wound. Isabella watched, helpless, as Victor's blood soaked through gauze and his face went progressively paler. What's the plan? She asked Marcus. Honestly, we're making this up as we go. Volkov's moving faster than we expected. He's got more resources, more men. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Marcus's expression was bleak. Our best bet is to go to ground, wait for him to overextend, then strike back hard. Or we give him what he wants, Victor said quietly. Every head in the room turned to stare at him. Isabella's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? He wants me. Wants to prove he's stronger, that he can take my empire. He's been using Isabella as bait to draw me out, but it hasn't worked because I've kept her hidden. Victor's gray eyes met hers, filled with something that looked like apology. What if we stop hiding? What if we give him a target he can't resist? Absolutely not, Isabella said immediately. You are not using yourself as bait. Not me. Us. Victor's hand tightened on hers. Think about it. Volkov wants to make a statement. He wants the whole city to see him take down Victor DeLuca. What better statement than taking my wife right in front of me? Have you lost your mind? Marcus stepped forward, his voice hard. You're talking about putting Isabella directly in harm's way. That goes against everything. Everything I've been trying to protect her from, I know. Victor's gaze never left Isabella's face. But she's not some helpless victim anymore. You've trained her, taught her to fight, to shoot, to survive. And more importantly, she's strong enough to handle this. Aren't you, Isabella? Isabella's mind raced. The logical part of her screamed that this was insane, that Victor was concussed or delirious from blood loss. But another part, the part that had spent 3 days training for exactly this kind of situation, understood the cold tactical logic. You want to draw Volkov out by making me the target, she said slowly. Make him think he has a chance to take me, use me against you. But it's a trap. Exactly. We choose the location, control the variables, have our people in position. Victor struggled to sit up straighter, grimacing. Volkov thinks you're my weakness. We turn that against him, make him believe he's winning right up until the moment we spring the trap. This is insane, Marcus repeated. Isabella's had 3 days of training. 3 days. She's not ready for this. She's ready enough. And she's the only leverage that will make Volkov commit completely. He won't be able to resist. Victor looked at Isabella, his expression intense. But I won't do this without your consent. This is your choice. You can say no. You can go to the mountain compound like I originally wanted, and we'll find another way. Isabella thought about the past 3 weeks, about choosing Victor, about demanding to be his partner instead of his protected possession, about all the training and preparation for exactly this moment. She thought about the woman she'd been when she'd walked into that courthouse, terrified, powerless, trapped. She wasn't that woman anymore. Tell me the plan, she said. All of it. If I'm going to be bait, I need to know every detail. Relief and pride warred on Victor's face. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but knew it was pointless. The doctor just shook her head and went back to bandaging Victor's shoulder with renewed urgency. There's a charity gala tomorrow night at the Grandview Hotel, Victor began, his voice taking on the cool, calculated tone of a strategist. High-profile event, lots of witnesses, security, cameras. I was supposed to attend but canceled when Volkov's threats escalated. What if I uncancel? Show up with my beautiful wife, make a very public appearance. Volkov will see it as an opportunity, Marcus said, understanding dawning. You're wounded, distracted. Your wife is exposed. He'll have to make a move. Exactly. And we'll be ready for him. Our people positioned throughout the venue, exits covered, every contingency planned. Victor's eyes were hard now. The crime lord fully emerged despite his injury. We end this tomorrow night, one way or another. And if it goes wrong? Isabella asked. If Volkov's men get to me before yours can stop them? Then you fight. You survive. You use everything Marcus taught you, and you stay alive until I can get to you. Victor pulled her close despite the pain it must have caused. But it won't come to that. I promise you, Isabella, I will not let him take you. You can't promise that. Not in the middle of a gunfight. Then I'll promise this instead. If he takes you, I'll burn the entire city to ashes to get you back. There won't be a hole deep enough for Volkov to hide. I will find him, and I will make him regret ever learning your name. The vow was delivered with such absolute conviction that Isabella believed every word. Victor DeLuca would wage war for her, would destroy everything and everyone who stood between them. Okay, she said. We do this. Tomorrow night. Together. They spent the rest of the day planning. Marcus brought in blueprints of the Grandview Hotel, mapping out every entrance and exit, every possible position for Volkov's men. They identified choke points, established fallback positions, coordinated with Victor's security team to have people in place hours before the event. Isabella was given specific instructions. Stay close to Victor at all times. If shooting started, get to the designated safe room on the 3rd floor. If separated from Victor, follow Marcus's orders without question. If grabbed by Volkov's men, fight dirty and fight hard. Eyes, throat, groin, anything to create an opening for rescue. One more thing, Marcus said, producing a small device that looked like an expensive piece of jewelry. This is a panic button disguised as a bracelet. You press this clasp 3 times quickly, and it sends an immediate alert to every member of the security team with your exact location. Wear it tomorrow night. Isabella took the bracelet, the weight of it heavier than its delicate appearance suggested. This was really happening. Tomorrow night, she'd walk into a room full of powerful people while assassins hunted her husband and saw her as a target. She should be terrified. And she was. But underneath the fear was something else. Determination, resolve, the absolute certainty that she would not let Volkov win. Victor was watching her, his expression unreadable. You can still change your mind. I'll put you on a helicopter to the compound right now if you want. No judgment. I'm not changing my mind. We're partners, remember? We do this together. Isabella crossed the room to him, careful of his injured shoulder as she wrapped her arms around him. I trust you, Victor. I trust your plan, and I trust myself to handle whatever comes. I don't deserve you, he murmured against her hair. But I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. They stayed at the safe house that night, too dangerous to move in the dark. Isabella lay awake for hours, pressed against Victor's uninjured side, listening to him breathe and trying not to think about all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. Can't sleep? Victor's voice was quiet in the darkness. Too much adrenaline, too much thinking. Isabella tilted her head to look at him. Tell me something true. Something you've never told anyone else. Victor was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hand found hers in the dark, fingers lacing together. I was 12 when I killed someone for the first time. A man who'd hurt my sister. The police called it self-defense, but that's not what it was. It was revenge. Cold, calculated, and I felt nothing afterward except satisfaction that he couldn't hurt her anymore. Isabella's breath caught. She'd known Victor was dangerous, but hearing him talk about childhood murder was different than abstract knowledge. My sister died anyway, Victor continued, his voice flat. Different man, 2 years later. I was too young, too weak to protect her. By the time I was strong enough, she was already gone. Everything I've built since then, the power, the empire, all of it, it's so I'm never too weak to protect someone I love again. Is that why you're so determined to protect me? Because you couldn't save her? Partly. But mostly because the thought of losing you is unbearable in a way I've never experienced. My sister's death broke something in me. Losing you would destroy what's left. Victor turned his head to look at her, his eyes catching the faint light from the boarded window. I know it's not healthy. I know I'm probably too possessive, too controlling. But Isabella, you're everything to me. My redemption, my second chance. The proof that I can build something good instead of just destroying what's rotten. Tears pricked Isabella's eyes. You're not broken, Victor. You're just human. Complicated and flawed and carrying too much pain. But you're not broken. You make me believe that. You make me want to be the man you see instead of the monster I know I am. He kissed her forehead gently. Tomorrow, no matter what happens, remember that I love you, that everything I do is to keep you safe. I know, and I love you too, enough to walk into danger beside you instead of hiding from it. Isabella pressed closer, careful of his wound. We're going to survive this, Victor. We're going to win, and then we're going to build the life we talked about on that island. Promise? Promise. They finally slept, tangled together, drawing strength from each other's presence. When Isabella woke, gray dawn light was filtering through the boards and Victor was already up, moving stiffly as he dressed in clothes Marcus had brought. How's the shoulder? She asked. Manageable. The doctor gave me some local anesthetic and strict orders not to use my left arm if possible. Victor's smile was wry. Good thing I shoot right-handed. The day passed in tense preparation. Isabella showered and changed into clothes appropriate for a charity gala, a stunning midnight blue gown that Victor's people had somehow procured overnight. It was beautiful and elegant, with strategic modifications Marcus had requested. The skirt had a hidden slit for mobility. The bodice had reinforced panels that functioned as light armor. A holster was custom fitted to her thigh, invisible beneath the fabric. You look beautiful, Victor said when she emerged. He was in a tuxedo despite his injury, looking every inch the powerful businessman instead of the wounded crime lord. And dangerous. I like it. Flattery will get you everywhere. Isabella helped him with his cufflinks, her hand steadier than she expected. Are you sure you're up for this? You were shot yesterday. I've functioned through worse, and besides, showing up injured makes the trap more convincing. Volkov will think I'm weakened, vulnerable. It'll make him overconfident. Victor caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Last chance to back out. Stop asking me that. I'm not backing out. I had to try. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Okay, let's go set a trap for a Russian arms dealer at a charity gala. Just another Friday night. The ride to the Grandview Hotel was surreal. They traveled in an armored limousine, flanked by security vehicles, Victor's hand never leaving Isabella's. She could feel his tension, the way his body was coiled and ready despite his injury. You remember the plan? He asked for the third time. Stay close to you. If separated, get to the safe room. If grabbed, fight dirty. Press the panic button if I need immediate help. Isabella touched the delicate bracelet on her wrist. I've got this, Victor. Trust me. I do. It's Volkov I don't trust. The hotel was spectacular, all marble and crystal chandeliers, the cream of society arriving in expensive cars and designer gowns. Security was tight, metal detectors at the entrance, guards checking invitations. But Isabella knew that Victor's people were here too, disguised as staff, as guests, positioned throughout the building. They made their entrance together, Victor's hand possessive on her waist. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Everyone knew who Victor DeLuca was, and the fact that he'd brought his new wife to such a public event was causing ripples of speculation. They're staring, Isabella murmured. Let them. I want everyone to see you, to know you're mine, to know that anyone who touches you is declaring war on me. Victor's voice was low, dangerous. And I want Volkov to see, to know his opportunity is here. They circulated through the ballroom, Victor accepting congratulations on their marriage and making small talk with people Isabella vaguely recognized from news reports. Business leaders, politicians, people who benefited from Victor's empire while pretending not to know how he'd built it. Isabella played her part perfectly, smiling and gracious, the devoted wife. But her eyes were constantly scanning, looking for threats, for anything out of place. Marcus had taught her well. An hour into the event, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Volkov's here. Third floor, he's not even trying to hide. That's bold. That's arrogant. He thinks he's already won. Victor's jaw tightened. Stay close. This is about to get interesting. They moved through the crowd toward the elevators, Victor's security team subtly repositioning to create a protective barrier. The ride to the third floor was tense, Isabella's hand on the weapon strapped to her thigh, ready. The third floor was quieter, designated for private meetings and smaller events. And there, standing in the hallway with 4 armed men flanking him, was Alexei Volkov. He was younger than Isabella expected, maybe 40, with cold blue eyes and a smile that never reached them. He looked at her like she was a commodity to be acquired. Victor DeLuca, I heard you were injured. Should you be out of bed? Volkov's English was accented but perfect. And this must be the famous wife. Isabella, yes? Even more beautiful than the photographs. Volkov. Victor's voice was ice. You've been making a lot of noise lately. Thought we should talk. Civilized men. No violence, just a conversation about the future. The future where I control your territory? Yes, let's discuss that. Volkov's smile widened. But first, why don't we have your wife wait elsewhere? This is business, not for delicate ears. My wife stays with me, always. Victor's hand tightened on Isabella's waist. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of her. Touching. The great Victor DeLuca, brought low by love. Your predecessors must be spinning in their graves. Volkov took a step closer, his men moving with him. I'll make this simple. You have something I want. Territory, connections, respect, and I'm going to take it. The question is whether you're smart enough to walk away while you still can. And if I'm not, then people you care about get hurt, starting with the pretty little wife you're so desperate to protect. Volkov's eyes fixed on Isabella with predatory intent. I wonder how long you'd hold out if I had her. How much of your empire you'd trade for her safe return. Shall we find out? Everything happened at once. Volkov's men reached for their weapons. Victor shoved Isabella behind him. The hallway exploded into chaos as Victor's security team emerged from hidden positions, weapons drawn. Gunfire erupted, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Isabella dropped to the floor like Marcus had taught her, rolling behind a decorative column. Her hand found her weapon, drew it smoothly. Training took over, muscle memory overriding panic. Victor was fighting despite his injury, moving with lethal efficiency. But there were too many of Volkov's men, and they were focused on separating him from Isabella. She saw Victor go down under two attackers, saw Volkov moving toward her with clear intent. She fired. The shot went wide. Adrenaline made her hands shake, but it was enough to make Volkov dive for cover. Isabella scrambled backward, heading for the safe room Marcus had shown her on the blueprints. She could hear Marcus shouting orders, hear the ongoing firefight behind her. Then hands grabbed her from behind. Isabella reacted on pure instinct. Elbow back into ribs, stomp down on instep, twist and break the grip. She spun, weapon coming up, and fired point blank into her attacker's chest. The man went down, dead before he hit the floor. Isabella stared at him for one frozen moment, shock threatening to overwhelm her. She'd just killed someone. Actually killed another human being. "Isabella, move!" Marcus's voice cut through her paralysis. She ran, making it to the safe room and slamming the door shut. Her hand shook as she engaged the locks, pressed her back against the wall, tried to catch her breath. The panic button. She should activate it. But before she could, the door exploded inward. Volkov stood in the entrance, blood running from a cut above his eye, his expression furious. Clever girl, but not clever enough. Isabella raised her weapon, but Volkov was faster. He kicked it from her hand, grabbed her by the throat, and slammed her against the wall hard enough to make stars explode across her vision. "You're going to be the reason Victor DeLuca dies," Volkov hissed in her face. "And you're going to watch while I do it." Then everything went black. Isabella woke to the sound of water and the nauseating rock of a boat beneath her. Her head throbbed where it had hit the wall, and her throat burned where Volkov's fingers had crushed her windpipe. She tried to move and realized her hands were zip-tied behind her back, her ankles bound together. Panic flared hot and immediate before training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, look for opportunities. She was on a yacht, not Victor's elegant vessel, but something smaller, faster. Through a porthole she could see darkness and choppy water. They were moving, heading away from the city lights visible in the distance. "Awake, I see." Volkov's voice came from behind her. "Good. I was worried I'd hit you too hard. Killing you quickly wouldn't serve my purposes." Isabella forced herself to turn, to meet his eyes without flinching. "Victor will find you. You know that, right? There's nowhere you can hide that he won't tear apart to get to me." "I'm counting on it. That's the entire point." Volkov crouched beside her, his smile cold. "Right now, your husband is receiving a video of you unconscious on this boat, along with coordinates to a meeting point. If he wants you back alive, he'll come alone. No security, no backup, just Victor DeLuca, wounded and desperate, walking into a trap. He's not stupid enough to fall for that. He's in love enough to fall for it. Love makes even brilliant men into fools." Volkov stood, checking his watch. "We have about an hour before we reach the rendezvous point. An abandoned oil platform 15 miles offshore. Very private, very remote. The perfect place for Victor DeLuca to die. And then what? You kill him, you kill me, and somehow that gives you his empire?" Isabella forced a laugh despite her fear. "His organization will tear you apart. You'll have every family in the city hunting you. They'll fall in line once they see I'm willing to do what Victor wasn't, to be as ruthless as necessary, to show no weakness." Volkov's expression darkened. "Your husband thought he could modernize the business, make it cleaner, more legitimate. He forgot that this world respects only one thing, strength demonstrated through violence. I'm going to remind everyone of that lesson." Isabella's mind raced. An hour. She had an hour to either escape or find a way to warn Victor that this was a trap. The panic button bracelet was gone. Volkov must have removed it. Her weapon was long lost. She had nothing but her hands and her training and the absolute certainty that she would not let this man win. "You made a mistake," she said quietly. "Oh? And what's that?" "You assumed I was helpless, that I was just some civilian wife who'd break easily." Isabella met his eyes directly. "But Victor didn't just marry me and hide me away. He made me his partner, taught me to fight, to survive. You're not holding some terrified victim, Volkov. You're holding a woman who will do whatever it takes to destroy you." For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across Volkov's face. Then he backhanded her, hard enough to split her lip. "Brave words from someone tied up and helpless. Let's see how brave you are when you watch your husband die." He left, climbing up to the deck. Isabella heard him talking to his men in Russian, their voices carrying over the engine noise. She forced herself to focus past the pain, past the fear, to think tactically like Marcus had taught her. The zip ties were tight, but not impossible. If she could find something sharp, something to cut them. She twisted, scanning the cabin. It was sparse, a few storage lockers, navigation equipment, nothing immediately useful. But there, an exposed screw on the bench seat, the edge slightly raised. Isabella worked her way across the floor, her bound ankles making movement awkward. It took precious minutes to position herself, to get the zip tie against that screw edge and start sawing. The plastic was thick and the angle was wrong and her shoulders screamed in protest, but she kept working. 5 minutes. 10. The yacht's engine changed pitch, slowing. They were approaching the oil platform. The zip tie snapped. Isabella nearly sobbed with relief as her hands came free. She quickly untied her ankles, blood rushing back into her extremities with painful pins and needles. She had maybe minutes before Volkov came back to get her. She needed a weapon, needed a plan. The storage lockers. She tore through them, finding emergency supplies, flares, a first aid kit, and there, a marine knife, serrated and sharp. Not a gun, but better than nothing. Footsteps on the stairs. Isabella shoved the knife into her ruined dress, positioned herself exactly where she'd been, hands behind her back as if still bound. She let her head loll, played unconscious. The door opened. Volkov's footsteps approached. "Time to wake up, Mrs. DeLuca. Your husband is here. Right on schedule, the lovesick fool." Victor was here. Had walked into the trap just like Volkov predicted. Isabella's heart clenched with fear and love and desperate determination. She had to act now, while she had the element of surprise. Volkov grabbed her arm to haul her up. Isabella exploded into movement, the knife appearing in her hand as she drove it toward his throat. He twisted at the last second, the blade scoring his shoulder instead of his jugular. Volkov roared in pain and fury, slamming her against the bulkhead. "You little—" His hands closed around her throat again, squeezing. Isabella kneed him in the groin with everything she had. As his grip loosened, she brought the knife up again, this time catching him across the ribs. Blood bloomed across his white shirt. He stumbled back, shock and rage warring on his face. Isabella didn't wait. She bolted for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. The deck was chaos. Volkov's men shouting, the yacht tied up to the rusted oil platform, rising from the dark water like a skeleton. And there, on the platform, she saw him. Victor. He stood alone at the edge of the platform, hands raised, his injured shoulder obviously paining him. 4 of Volkov's men surrounded him, weapons drawn. It was exactly the trap Volkov had described. "Victor!" Isabella's scream cut through the night. Everything happened fast. Victor's head whipped toward her voice. The momentary distraction was all he needed. He moved with lethal speed despite his injury, disarming the closest gunman and using him as a shield as the others opened fire. The night exploded with muzzle flashes and the crack of gunfire. Isabella ran toward the platform, Volkov's wounded roar behind her. One of his men appeared in her path, and she didn't hesitate, driving the knife into his thigh and shouldering past him as he fell screaming. She reached the platform just as Victor eliminated the last of his immediate attackers. Their eyes met across the distance, and the relief and fear and love in his expression nearly broke her. "Behind you!" he shouted. Isabella spun. Volkov was there, blood-soaked and furious. A gun in his hand pointed directly at her chest. "This ends now," he snarled. "You first, then your husband, then I take everything he built." The gunshot was deafening. But it wasn't Volkov who fired. Victor's bullet took him in the shoulder, the same shoulder Isabella had stabbed, spinning him around. The Russian's gun went flying, clattering across the metal platform. Victor was already moving, crossing the distance with focused intensity despite his wound. "You made a critical error, Volkov," Victor said, his voice deadly calm as he stood over the fallen man. "You thought love was weakness. You thought caring about my wife made me vulnerable. But you forgot. Love doesn't just make you vulnerable. It makes you absolutely ruthless about protecting what's yours. You think you've won? Volkov laughed, blood bubbling on his lips. My men are everywhere. You killed me. They'll never stop coming for you. Your men are already dead or surrendered. My entire security force was waiting in the water. Did you really think I'd come alone? Victor's smile was cold. You fell for the exact same trap you tried to set for me. You assumed I'd be so desperate to save Isabella that I'd be stupid. But Volkov, I'm never stupid, especially not when it comes to protecting my wife. As if on cue, boats roared up to the platform, Victor's men, heavily armed, securing the area. Marcus was among them, his expression relieved when he saw Isabella standing. You okay, boss? He called up. We're fine. Get medical up here, and someone secure Volkov. He's going to answer a lot of questions before this is over. Victor finally turned to Isabella, his control cracking. Are you hurt? Bruises, cut lip, nothing serious. Isabella was shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Victor, I killed someone. At the hotel, one of Volkov's men grabbed me and I know, I saw. Victor pulled her against him, careful of both their injuries. You did what you had to do to survive, to fight back. I'm so proud of you, Isabella, and so incredibly grateful you're alive. He knew. Volkov knew you'd come for me, that you'd risk everything. Isabella's hands fisted in Victor's jacket. He was right. You walked into his trap. Not his trap, ours. Victor tilted her face up, his thumb gentle on her split lip. I knew he'd take you. Knew he'd use you to draw me out. That's why we prepared. Why I had teams in position. Why I made sure he thought he was winning right up until the moment he lost. You were never bait, Isabella. You were the queen on the chessboard, the piece that forced him to overcommit and expose himself. That's a very flattering way of describing me getting kidnapped and almost strangled. You escaped, wounded him, warned me, survived. Victor's kiss was gentle despite the violence surrounding them. You're magnificent, terrifying and magnificent and completely mine. Completely yours, Isabella agreed, then winced as the motion pulled at her bruised throat. Medical personnel swarmed the platform, checking both of them despite their protests. Victor's shoulder wound had reopened during the fight, soaking through his bandages. Isabella's throat was already bruising in the shape of Volkov's fingers, and she had various cuts and scrapes from her escape. You both need a hospital, the medic said firmly. We need to finish this first. Victor's eyes were on Volkov, who was being restrained by 3 of his men. I want him conscious. I want him to understand exactly what's about to happen. Marcus approached, his expression grim. Boss, we've got a situation. Volkov's backers, the Russian oligarchs who funded him, they're not going to be happy he failed. They might send more people. Then we make sure they know not to. Victor straightened despite his obvious pain. Volkov made this public. Attacked me in front of witnesses at a charity gala. Kidnapped my wife. Everyone in our world is watching to see how I respond. If I show mercy, if I let this slide, every ambitious punk with a gun will think they can take a shot at my empire. Isabella understood what he was saying, what he was about to do. She should be horrified, should try to stop him. But looking at Volkov, the man who'd strangled her, who'd planned to make her watch Victor die, she felt no sympathy. Only cold satisfaction that he would pay for his crimes. What do you need from me? She asked quietly. Victor looked surprised. Nothing. You should go back to the city. Let the doctors check you out. You've done enough. I'm staying. If you have to do something terrible, I'm not making you do it alone. Isabella's jaw set stubbornly. Partners, remember? All of it. The good and the terrible. Something fierce and possessive blazed in Victor's eyes. You're sure? I'm sure. He nodded once, then turned to Marcus. Clear the platform. Just me, Isabella, and Volkov. Everyone else back to the boats. There was no argument. Within minutes, the platform was empty except for the 3 of them. Volkov, bleeding and restrained, Victor standing over him with Isabella at his side. You wanted to take my empire, Victor said, his voice carrying clearly in the night air. Wanted to prove you were stronger, more ruthless. But Volkov, You never understood what really makes someone powerful in this world. It's not just violence. It's knowing when to use it and when to show restraint. It's building loyalty instead of demanding it through fear. It's having something worth fighting for instead of just fighting because you can. Spare me the philosophy, Volkov spat. You're going to kill me. Just do it and stop pretending you're better than me. I am better than you because I built something that will last. Because people follow me out of respect, not terror. Because I found someone worth changing for. Victor's hand found Isabella's, squeezing gently. You're right about one thing, though. I am going to kill you, but not because I'm ruthless or cruel, because you're a threat to everything I've built, to the woman I love, and I eliminate threats. The gunshot echoed across the water. Volkov slumped, dead before his body hit the platform. Victor stood over him for a moment, his expression unreadable, before turning away. It's done, he said quietly. Marcus, get the body. Make sure Volkov's backers receive a clear message about what happens when they send assassins after me. The boats returned. Victor's men handled the cleanup with professional efficiency. Isabella stood beside her husband, their hands still clasped, watching the organized chaos. She should feel something about watching a man die, guilt or horror or shame. But all she felt was relief that the threat was gone, that Victor was safe, that they'd survived. You're not upset, Victor observed, watching her face carefully. I probably should be. Probably says something terrible about me that I'm not. Isabella looked up at him. But Victor, he would have killed you, would have killed me. Sometimes violence is the only answer to violence. That's the logic I've lived by for 20 years. It's not always comfortable, but it's honest. Victor pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. Let's go home. Real home. Together. The journey back to the city was quiet. Both of them were treated by the medical team on Victor's largest yacht. Antibiotics for his reopened shoulder wound, pain medication they both refused, careful cleaning and bandaging of Isabella's various injuries. By the time they docked at the private marina, dawn was breaking over the city. The penthouse had never looked better. Isabella walked through the familiar space, seeing it differently now, not as a cage but as a sanctuary. Their home. The place where their real life would begin now that Volkov's threat was eliminated. You need rest, Victor said, guiding her toward the master bedroom. We both do. Your room or mine? The question was teasing but genuine. Ours. No more separate suites, no more distance. From now on, we share everything. Victor opened the door to the master bedroom Isabella had never entered. It was beautiful, all dark woods and soft grays, massive windows overlooking the city, a bed that looked like clouds. They helped each other undress carefully, mindful of injuries, showered together, washing away blood and fear and violence. When they finally crawled into bed, both of them were shaking with exhaustion. I thought I'd lost you, Victor murmured against her hair. When I saw that video of you unconscious, I've never been that terrified in my life. I thought I'd watch you die, that Volkov would make me witness it before he killed me too. Isabella pressed closer, needing the reassurance of his solid warmth. We survived, though. Together. Together, Victor agreed. Always together, from now on. They slept deeply, bodies intertwined, healing together. When Isabella woke, afternoon sun was streaming through the windows and Victor was already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. Hi, she said softly. Hi yourself. His fingers traced her cheekbone, careful of the bruise forming there. How do you feel? Like I got strangled and thrown around a boat? But alive, grateful to be alive. Isabella caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. What happens now? With Volkov gone, with his people eliminated? Now we rebuild, reinforce, make it clear that the attempt on my territory failed spectacularly. Victor's expression grew serious. There will be a period of adjustment. Other organizations testing boundaries, seeing if Volkov's death left any weaknesses. But we'll handle it. Together. Together, Isabella echoed. I like the sound of that. Good. Because I meant what I said. No more separate lives. You're my partner in everything now, not just the marriage, the business, the empire. All of it. Victor sat up, wincing at the pull on his shoulder. I know it's not what you signed up for. When your father offered you to clear his debts, you didn't know you were marrying into this level of danger. No. I thought I was marrying a cold businessman who'd ignore me as long as I stayed out of the way. Isabella sat up too, the sheet pooling at her waist. But Victor, what we have now, what we built together, this is so much better than safety. This is real. Partnership, love, a life that matters. You don't regret it? Any of it? I regret that people died. I regret that I had to kill someone. I regret the violence and the fear. Isabella took his face in her hands, making him meet her eyes. But I don't regret choosing you, choosing us. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Victor kissed her deeply, thoroughly, until they were both breathless. I love you. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You changed everything for me, Isabella. You changed everything for me too, made me stronger, braver, showed me I could be more than just a victim of my father's mistakes. Isabella smiled against his mouth. So what's next for us? After we finish rebuilding and reinforcing and making sure no one else tries to take your empire? That depends. What do you want? Really want, if you could have anything? Isabella thought about that, about the teaching degree she'd never finished, about the quiet life she'd once imagined, about the woman she'd been versus the woman she'd become. I want to finish my education, maybe not teaching. I think I'm too changed for that now, but something, business maybe. Learn how your legitimate corporations actually function. She paused, considering. And I want to help. With the charitable foundations you donate to anonymously, I want to make sure some of the money from your empire goes to actually helping people. Kids like I was, trapped by their parents' addictions and mistakes. Victor's expression was soft, proud. Done. All of it. I'll set up accounts for you to manage, put you in charge of the charitable operations, and pay for whatever schooling you want, business degree, law degree, anything. You don't have to. I want to. Isabella, I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I want to use it to give you the life you deserve, the opportunities you should have had before your father ruined everything. Victor pulled her close, careful of their injuries. I want to build something with you, not just a criminal empire, a real legacy, something good that outlasts us both. Tears pricked Isabella's eyes. You're a good man, Victor DeLuca. Complicated and dangerous and morally gray, but good where it counts. Only because of you. You make me want to be better. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. Marry me again. Isabella blinked. We're already married. I know, but our wedding was a transaction in a courthouse. I want to do it again, properly. A real ceremony with people we care about. Vows that mean something because we're choosing each other, not because we were trapped by circumstances. Victor's eyes were intense, vulnerable. Marry me again, Isabella? Not because of debts or contracts or obligations, just because you want to. Yes. The word came without hesitation. Yes, I'll marry you again as many times as you want. His smile was brilliant, transforming his usually controlled features into something boyish and joyful. Soon, as soon as we're healed, I want the world to see that you chose me, that we chose each other. They spent the rest of the day in bed, making plans and promises, healing together. Victor made calls, issuing orders to his organization, ensuring the transition after Volkov's death went smoothly. Isabella researched degree programs, thinking about what she wanted to study, how she wanted to contribute to their shared future. As evening fell, they moved to the terrace, watching the city lights come on one by one, the same view Isabella had stared at 3 weeks ago when she'd felt like a ghost in Victor's home. Now everything was different. She was different. Do you think my father knows, she asked quietly, that Volkov tried to use me? That there was a war over his debts? Probably. News travels fast in our world. Victor's arm tightened around her waist. Do you want to see him? I can arrange it. Isabella thought about her father, about the years of disappointment and broken promises, the way he'd sold her to pay his debts without a second thought. Part of her wanted to rage at him, to make him understand what his choices had cost her. But another part, the part that had survived and grown and become someone strong, felt only pity. No, he made his choices. I made mine. We don't need to see each other again. She leaned into Victor's warmth. He gave me to you to clear a debt. But in doing that, he accidentally gave me the best thing that ever happened to me. So in a twisted way, I'm grateful. Only you could find gratitude in being used as payment for gambling debts. Victor's laugh was warm. But I'm grateful too. Grateful he was selfish and desperate enough to agree to my offer. Grateful you were strong enough to survive it. Grateful every day that you're mine. Completely yours, Isabella agreed, turning in his arms to kiss him properly. Now and always. The weeks that followed were busy. Victor's organization absorbed the remnants of Volkov's operations, eliminating rivals and consolidating power. Isabella started her business degree online, studying while also taking over management of Victor's charitable foundations. She discovered she had a talent for it, identifying worthy causes, vetting organizations, ensuring money went where it would do the most good. She also continued training with Marcus, refusing to let her new skills atrophy. Victor had been right that his world was dangerous. She needed to stay sharp, stay ready, stay capable of protecting herself and the life they were building together. Their second wedding was small and intimate, just Marcus and a few of Victor's most trusted people, held at sunset on the private island where everything between them had changed. Isabella wore a simple white dress, wildflowers in her hair, barefoot on the sand. Victor looked at her like she hung the moon. When they exchanged vows this time, every word was true and chosen and meant. I choose you, Isabella said, her hands clasped in Victor's. Not because I have to. Not because circumstances forced us together, but because you're the best man I know. Flawed and dangerous and absolutely perfect for me. I choose you today and every day for the rest of our lives. I choose you, Victor echoed, his voice thick with emotion. My redemption. My second chance. The woman who made me believe I could be more than the sum of my sins. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and build a life with you that's worthy of the gift of your love. I choose you, Isabella, today and always. Marcus, serving as officiant, smiled. By the power vested in me by absolutely no one, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, you may kiss your bride, boss. Victor did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, while their small audience cheered. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying and completely happy, Isabella felt like she'd come home. This was where she belonged. Not in some quiet life teaching literature to indifferent students, but here, beside this complicated, dangerous man who loved her enough to change, building something meaningful from the ashes of violence and crime, creating a legacy that would outlast them both. They honeymooned for real this time, 3 weeks on the island with no interruptions, no threats, no violence. Just the two of them, learning each other thoroughly, planning their future together. When they finally returned to the city, it was as true partners, equal in every way that mattered. Isabella threw herself into her work with the foundations, expanding their reach and impact. She enrolled in business school properly, attending classes and making connections. Victor supported her completely, proud of every accomplishment, every milestone. Their life settled into a rhythm. Dangerous sometimes, when threats emerged or rivals made moves, but also beautiful, filled with love and partnership and the absolute certainty that they were stronger together than apart. 6 months after Volkov's death, Isabella sat in Victor's office at the command center, reviewing grant applications for a new women's shelter. Victor was on a call in Russian, managing some situation in Moscow, his free hand absently playing with her hair as she worked at the desk beside his. This was their life now. Violence and charity, crime and compassion. The contradictions that made them who they were. Hey, Victor said, ending his call and turning his full attention to her. I have something for you. Isabella looked up from her laptop. If it's another ridiculously expensive gift, I'm going to remind you that I married you for love, not money. It's not expensive. Well, it is, but that's not the point. Victor pulled a folder from his desk drawer, sliding it across to her. Open it. Inside was a legal document. Isabella scanned it quickly, her eyes widening. Victor, this is a trust for children. Our children, eventually, when we're ready, Victor's smile was soft, hopeful. I want them to have choices we didn't have. To grow up safe and loved and able to become whoever they want to be. No debts, no obligations, just freedom and opportunity and parents who chose each other. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. You want children with me? I want everything with you. A real family, a real life. Not just the empire and the danger, but all the normal, beautiful things too. Victor pulled her into his lap, holding her close. What do you think? Are you ready for that someday? Someday, Isabella agreed, wrapping her arms around his neck. When the world is a little safer. When we've built something stable enough to bring children into. But yes, Victor, someday I want to have your babies and raise them to be strong and kind and everything we wish we'd been. They'll be magnificent, just like their mother. Victor kissed her tenderly. I love you, Isabella De Luca. My wife, my partner, my whole world. I love you too. My impossible, complicated, perfect husband. Isabella rested her forehead against his. Thank you for making me strong enough to choose this life. To choose you. To choose us. Thank you for choosing me despite everything. For seeing past the monster to the man underneath. For making me believe I deserved redemption. Victor's arms tightened around her. We're going to build something beautiful, Isabella. I promise you that. Out of all this darkness, we're going to create something that matters. And they did. Years later, when people asked Isabella about her marriage to Victor De Luca, she never told the whole truth, never mentioned the violence or the fear or the night she'd killed a man to survive. She didn't talk about being sold to pay debts or the criminal empire her husband controlled. Instead, she smiled and said they'd had an unusual beginning but had found real love, that he'd taught her to be strong and she'd taught him to be gentle, that together they'd built a life neither could have imagined alone. Because that was the truth that mattered, not how they'd started, not the contract or the transaction or the danger that had nearly destroyed them, but what they'd chosen to become together, partners, equals, survivors who'd turned a business arrangement into the deepest love either had ever known. And every night, when Victor pulled her close in their bed and whispered that she was his whole world, Isabella knew she'd made the right choice, in choosing danger over safety, in choosing complicated over simple, in choosing Victor De Luca over freedom. Because freedom, she'd learned, wasn't about being alone and safe. True freedom was choosing who you stood beside, who you fought for, who you built a life with despite impossible odds. And Isabella had chosen well. She'd chosen love, she'd chosen strength, she'd chosen the dangerous, beautiful, complicated life that came with being Victor De Luca's wife. And she'd never regretted it for a single moment.